Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere colder. A place where winter wasn't just a season, but a living enemy. A city buried in snow, smoke, and silence. Stalingrad, 1942. Forget the textbook version, the maps, the statistics. Forget the black and white photos of soldiers posing for propaganda reels. This isn't about strategy or glory. It's about survival. About what it meant to be human, when everything around you was frozen, starving and burning at the same time. This was a world where the air could flay your skin open, where warmth was a luxury, and where a small fire could mean the difference between living until dawn or never waking up again. Tonight, we're not following generals or orders. We're following the soldiers. The ordinary ones, the ones who dug, scraped and bled just to build something that might pass for shelter in a city that no longer had walls. So before you settle in, maybe dim the lights, take a slow breath, and let your mind drift toward the snow-covered ruins of a city that once pulsed with life. The year is 1942. The German army surrounds Stalingrad. Supplies are cut off. The temperature drops below freezing, then keeps falling. The Volga River turns to solid ice, and men begin to vanish into the white. And yet, beneath the shattered streets, beneath the broken windows and collapsed buildings, something stirs. Shovels scrape against frozen earth. Boots stamp down dirt. Planks, bricks, twisted metal, anything that can keep the wind out is scavenged. Every handful of soil, every inch of space dug by hand is a small rebellion against death. That's where we begin tonight. Not with victory, not with speeches, but with a hole in the ground, a handful of frostbitten men, and the question that haunted them every night. How do you build a home when the world around you has turned into a grave? You wake up in Stalingrad, 1942. The first thing you notice is the sound, or rather the lack of it. The world isn't quiet here, it's muffled. Every noise feels wrapped in frost. The distant thud of artillery comes like a heartbeat through layers of snow, dust and ruined brick. Somewhere nearby, metal groans as if the city itself is stretching, old bones protesting another morning. You don't remember falling asleep, not really. Nobody does. Sleep here isn't rest. It's just the moment when your body gives up fighting the cold for a few hours. You're lying in what used to be a basement, though it doesn't deserve the name anymore. Half the ceiling has collapsed, the walls sweat with ice, and the air smells of rust, smoke, and unwashed men. There's no bed, no mattress, just planks, rubble, and your own coat balled up beneath your head. The air burns when you breathe it. You pull your scarf higher, but the fabric is stiff with frost. The layer of ice on your eyelashes cracks when you blink. Your breath turns to steam and vanishes into the dim air. The temperature outside is somewhere below -30. Inside, it's not much better. The small fire in the corner died hours ago, leaving only a few glowing embers hidden beneath a crust of ash. One of the men stirs beside you, wrapped in a torn blanket that's more whole than cloth. He doesn't open his eyes. He just pulls it tighter, like it might make any difference. The walls tremble again, another shell landing somewhere to the north. Dust drifts down from the cracked ceiling. You turn your head and watch it settle on a stack of empty ration tins. A small frost-covered mouse scurries across the floor, stops and vanishes behind a brick. You don't flinch. You haven't flinched at anything for weeks. The first movement of the day is slow, deliberate. You reach for your boots. They're frozen stiff, standing upright beside the entrance like a pair of small gravestones. You rub the leather between your palms until it gives a little. One by one, you force your feet inside. The lining crunches with ice. Your toes are numb halfway through, but there's no other way. If you wait too long, they'll freeze solid before you even step outside. Your coat is heavy, not from warmth, but from everything it's absorbed. Mud, smoke, and days of sweat that never had a chance to dry. The smell is a mixture of wet wool and diesel fuel. You button it up to your throat, adjust your belt, and step toward the light leaking through the broken stairwell. It's faint, blue, and sharp like a blade. Morning. Outside, the city barely exists. Buildings lean at strange angles, hollowed out by months of shelling. Chimneys stick out from heaps of rubble like broken fingers. The snow isn't white here. It's grey, layered with soot and gunpowder. Every breath of wind stirs the ash into motion, coating your face, your hands, your eyes. Somewhere in the distance, a wall collapses with a soft groan, and the sound rolls through the frozen streets like thunder trapped in molasses. The sky is pale, colourless, almost metallic. Smoke hangs low, moving slowly over the ruins like a living thing. You step carefully through the wreckage, past what used to be a tram stop, past twisted rails and shattered glass. The ground crunches underfoot. Sometimes snow, sometimes bone. You don't check which. A group of men huddle around a barrel a few metres away. There's a faint flame inside, flickering against the wind. They're holding their hands above it, palms blackened from soot. Their faces are hollow, their cheeks sunken, their noses red and cracked. One of them is still in uniform, though most aren't anymore. The regulation tunics have long since been replaced by whatever could be found. Women's coats, carpets, German jackets stripped from bodies. You nod to them, and one nods back. No words. Words take effort, and effort costs warmth. One of the men pulls something from his pocket, a scrap of newspaper, and feeds it to the fire. The paper curls, blackens, and is gone. The small burst of heat is gone just as quickly. Someone offers you a sip from a tin cup. It's not tea or soup, just water melted from snow. It tastes of iron and smoke, but it's liquid, and that's enough. You drink and feel it freeze again, almost immediately in the air. You check your weapon out of habit, though the metal is so cold it bites your skin. The oil has thickened, the mechanism sluggish. You work the bolt anyway, listening to the dull click that tells you it still functions, at least for now. The rifle isn't just a weapon here. It's heat. It's something solid to hold on to when your fingers stop feeling like fingers. The air smells faintly of cordite, gun oil, and frozen meat. Somewhere nearby, someone is cooking something. A miracle in itself. You can almost smell the faint sweetness of burned grain. Maybe a crust of bread, saved from yesterday's ration. The scent drifts and disappears, replaced by the more familiar stench of fuel and decay. You remember that this used to be a city. Streets, trams, bakeries, children. You've seen the photographs, the clean ones from before. Now everything that was straight is crooked. Everything that was living is still. You pass a wrecked trolley, half buried in snow. The windows are shattered, the seats inside covered in frost. A pair of boots stick out from beneath it. You don't look closer. You've seen enough of that to last a lifetime. The cold is constant, not sharp anymore, just heavy. It seeps through everything. Clothes, bones, thoughts. You feel it in your teeth when you breathe. Even your voice, if you spoke, would sound brittle. But there's no point speaking. There's only work to do. The lieutenant. a man who hasn't smiled since summer, emerges from behind a pile of rubble. His coat is too big, his scarf gone. He gestures toward a collapsed wall. There's a space beneath it, small but deep, half hidden by bricks and snow. That's where the order comes from. Dig. Not because anyone told him from above, but because instinct does. You can't survive in this wind. You need cover. Something to crawl into when night falls again. You pick up a rusted shovel. It's bent, cracked along the edge, but still a tool. Your fingers are barely close around the handle. The first scoop barely breaks the surface. The ground is frozen solid, harder than concrete. Every strike sends a jolt up your arm. The others join in, scraping, breaking, pushing aside clumps of ice and brick. It's not fast, not organised. It's just survival. Men trying to make a hole big enough to hide from the cold. You work in silence, except for the sound of metal against earth. Occasionally, someone coughs, a dry, painful sound. The air cuts the inside of your throat when you inhale. The snow around your feet is stained black from coal dust and brown from blood. Hours pass, though time has no meaning here. The sun doesn't rise, it just becomes slightly less dark. Your breath fogs and freezes on your scarf. Your hands ache so deeply that pain no longer feels like pain. It's just another state of being. You dig because you have to. You dig because the earth, no matter how cold, is still better than the wind. Eventually the hole is deep enough. Big enough for 2, maybe 3 men if they squeeze tight. Someone finds a broken door and drags it over the top for a roof. Bricks are stacked along the edges, gaps stuffed with rags and bits of cloth. It's ugly, crude, but it's something. A space between you and the world outside. You crawl in first. The air is damp and smells of soil and gasoline. You light a small fire in a tin can using shavings of wood and a piece of cloth soaked in fuel. The smoke fills the hole almost immediately, curling along the ceiling before seeping out through cracks. You cough, but you don't stop. The heat is weak but real. Another man crawls in beside you. You sit shoulder to shoulder, sharing breath. The space is so small that when one of you moves, both do. You pass a flask between you. It's vodka, barely. It burns, and you can feel it spreading warmth through your chest like a slow-moving flame. Outside, the wind howls through the ruins. Somewhere distant, artillery booms again, echoing through the city's bones. But down here, in this hole, you feel insulated. Not safe, never safe, but separated from the worst of it. You pull your coat tighter, press your back against the dirt, and stare at the flickering flame. And the light makes shadows dance on the wall. Shapes that could almost be people if you let your eyes unfocus long enough. The man next to you mutters something under his breath. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. It doesn't matter. You close your eyes for a moment. It's still morning, technically, though it feels like midnight has never left. You know that the cold will find a way in again soon. The fire will die, the smoke will choke you, the walls will weep with ice. But for now, in this small pocket of warmth carved out of the earth, you exist. You breathe. You're not yet frozen, not yet gone. And when you open your eyes again, the city above will still be burning under the snow. The wind will still be moving through the bones of buildings. And you will have to dig again, deeper this time, because Stalingrad is not a place you live in. It's a place you survive inside of. The cold doesn't begin. It never stops. It just exists. A constant, invisible presence pressing against your skin from every direction. You wake up with it, Work with it, breathe it, dream through it. It moves through cloth, through wood, through walls, until it's inside you, curling into your lungs like smoke you can't exhale. The men have stopped talking about the temperature. There's no number that fits it anymore. The only words left are simple ones. Freezing, dead, gone. The wind comes first. It doesn't blow so much as crawl. It snakes through cracks, through the smallest holes in the dugout roof, and finds its way down the back of your neck. You pull the blanket higher, but the fabric is stiff, frozen solid where your breath touched it during the night. The corner near your head is white with frost. It glitters faintly in the dark, like a thin layer of ground glass. When you shift your arm, the cloth beneath you crackles. Your sleeve is stuck to the side of the dugout wall. The moisture from your breath froze overnight, bonding the fabric to the dirt. You peel it away slowly, listening to the sound it makes, like ripping old paper. Every movement takes more energy than you can spare. You keep your gloves on, even inside the shelter, though the fingers are stiff and splitting. Your hands don't look like hands anymore. The skin is cracked, peeling, blue where the blood no longer reaches. The nails are rimmed with dirt and black lines. One finger is wrapped in a strip of cloth, torn from someone's shirt. It's starting to turn grey beneath the bandage. You don't unwrap it. You already know what you'll see. When someone coughs, the sound bounces off the walls and lingers, echoing like a hollow drum. The air is thick with breath and smoke. It smells of oil, damp earth, and sweat that has long since turned sour. The fire in the tin can has gone out again, leaving only a faint line of smoke that hangs low, refusing to rise. You don't bother relighting it yet. There's barely any wood left, and the last splinter of it might be the difference between sleeping warm for 10 minutes or freezing before dawn tomorrow. Outside, the city moans. You can hear the sound of wind scraping across ruined brick, the whine of metal as another structure settles under its own weight. Snow drifts through gaps in the rubble, piling against doorways and bodies alike. The cold makes everything slower. Even the explosions sound distant, their force smothered by layers of frozen air. When you crawl out of the hole, your face meets the wind like a slap. It doesn't sting. It burns, but from the inside out. The air is sharp enough to make your eyes water, and the tears freeze before they fall. You squint against the brightness of the snow, though the sun never truly shines here. The light is colourless, diffused through haze and smoke, a dull reflection of what daylight is supposed to be. Your breath comes in shallow bursts. Every inhale feels like swallowing knives. Your scarf is crusted with ice. You can taste the salt from your own skin frozen into it. The snow beneath your boots crunches with a dry, brittle sound. There's no softness in it. It's not like the kind that falls quietly in the countryside. This snow is mixed with ash and soot, layered with the dust of shattered buildings. It doesn't melt when you touch it. It just smears grey against your glove. A figure moves a few metres away. It's one of your comrades, though it takes a second to tell who. Everyone looks the same now. Faces hidden under scarves, coats layered and tied with wire, movement slow and deliberate. He's bent over collecting something from the ground. Bricks, maybe. You walk over and see it's not bricks at all, but pieces of wood stripped from a broken door. Each one is frozen solid, and he's beating it against the ground to knock off the ice. Firewood, every splinter of it worth more than food. You help him gather what you can find. The wood breaks easily, brittle from the cold. By the time you return to the dugout, your hands are stiff again, and your fingers have lost feeling. You toss the fragments into the tin can and light them with a scrap of paper. The fire flares, weak and yellow, then steadies into a small flicker. The heat barely reaches your face, but it's enough to feel like life. One of the men closest to the fire holds out his hands. The skin there is blistered, black around the edges. He doesn't move them too close, afraid they'll split open again. You can see the steam rising from the wet patches on his gloves. He laughs softly, though it sounds more like a cough. You can't tell if it's from the smoke or something deeper in his chest. Someone tries to warm a tin of food beside the flame. The metal hisses, expands, and a thin trickle of steam escapes. It smells faintly of meat, but mostly of tin and ashes. You take turns holding it, passing it from one person to the next. Everyone takes a spoonful and passes it along, careful not to spill a drop. When the last of it is gone, someone wipes the inside with a piece of bread so hard it could crack a tooth. Nothing is wasted. Not a crumb, not a sound. The cold reaches everything. Your rifle, propped in the corner, is coated in frost. The bolt handle sticks when you try to move it. You hold it near the fire until the metal loosens. Every few minutes, you rub the barrel with a rag, not because it helps much, but because it gives your hand something to do. Movement means circulation. Circulation means blood. Blood means maybe keeping your fingers one more day. The men speak little. Voice is low and hoarse. One mentions that the Germans across the street must be just as cold. Another jokes that maybe the cold will kill them both and that settle the war for good. The laughter that follows is brief and empty. It dies in the air before anyone smiles. You think of home, though the word doesn't mean much anymore. You remember walls that didn't shake, food that was hot, a stove that hummed. You remember colour. Everything here is grey or brown or white, even faces. You close your eyes and try to picture something warm. A summer day, a field, the sound of water, but the image fades before it forms. All you can hear is wind. At night it gets worse. The temperature drops so sharply it feels like the air is collapsing inward. The ground creaks beneath the frost. The dugout walls weep moisture that freezes into glassy veins. You sleep in short bursts, waking each time your foot or arm goes numb. Sometimes you dream you're on fire, just because it's the only way your mind can still remember warmth. The men beside you shift in their sleep, murmuring, groaning. One snores loudly until he coughs himself awake. Another pulls the blanket from your shoulder without meaning to, and for a second the cold pours over you like water. You grab it back, your hand shaking, and press yourself tighter against the dirt wall. The fire has burned down again. The room is filled with faint white vapour, your combined breath crystallizing in the air. You reach for the tin can, shake it, and find only ash. Someone mutters something in their sleep, maybe your name, maybe not. You can't tell. You close your eyes again and wait for the first shell to fall. Not because you want it to, but because it will. It always does. The next morning, if you can call it that, the world looks exactly the same. The same snow, the same silence, the same motionless shapes in the street. The cold hasn't lifted. It's just waiting. You stretch your hands near the embers, feeling the faintest warmth on your palms. Your breath fogs and freezes against the ceiling again. You think about what needs to be done. Wood to find, snow to melt, another layer of dirt to pack over the roof. And as you pull on your boots, still stiff, still damp, you realise the truth every man here already knows. You can't escape the cold in Stalingrad. You can only hide from it for a few hours at a time. The wind will always find you. The frost will always crawl back in. And no matter how deep you dig, the cold waits, patient and quiet, like another enemy that never sleeps. The city above you is gone, but it still breathes. Every step you take through it feels like walking inside a corpse that hasn't realised it's dead yet. The outlines of streets remain, but nothing connects anymore. Corners end in pits. Roads vanish into heaps of brick. Staircases rise into open air. Each building has been gutted and left standing like a burnt-out skeleton, ribs of steel and concrete jutting against the pale sky. When you climb out from the dugout, your boots sink into a crust of snow that breaks easily. Beneath it lies a layer of ash that never melts. It coats everything: walls, weapons, skin. Your gloves are grey within minutes, and no amount of wiping changes that. The smell of smoke is endless, a mixture of burned oil, charred wood, and something else you stopped identifying long ago. The air tastes like it's been used too many times already. You walk past what used to be a school. The front wall is missing, the blackboard still faintly visible under a film of ice. A few desks lie scattered in the rubble, their metal legs twisted and bent. There's a half-buried textbook, the pages fused together from moisture and dirt. Someone has scrawled a name on the cover in faded pencil. You don't stop to read it. You step over it carefully and move on. Everywhere you look, there are holes in the ground. Shell craters, collapsed cellars, places where people tried to dig and didn't finish. The outlines of the old tram lines cut through the snow like scars. The city feels hollow, as if it's been turned inside out. Even sound behaves differently here. The wind doesn't whistle, it groans. The echoes from distant gunfire come from strange directions, bouncing between broken walls that no longer have roofs. You see shapes that might be people, but you don't call out. Some of them move, slow and hunched, dragging something behind them. Others are still, half covered by snow, unrecognisable until you're almost on top of them. You've learned to tell the difference by instinct. Movement means life. Stillness means everything else. You stop reacting either way. The factories that once defined the city are silent now, just jagged outlines against the horizon. Their chimneys rise like monuments, dark and useless. Inside, the floors are covered with debris and shattered glass. The smell of machine oil lingers, mixed with a faint metallic tang of rust. It feels wrong that something so huge could go quiet. You pass a lathe frozen in place, its gears clogged with ice. A few years ago, it turned metal into tanks and shells. Now it just collects frost. Somewhere to your left, an explosion blooms, dull and distant. You don't look toward it. You've learned that by the time you hear it, it's already over. The air carries the shockwave as a gentle push, stirring a fine mist of powdery snow from the ground. The flakes hover for a moment, then settle again, blending seamlessly into the landscape. You pass through an intersection where nothing remains but fragments of signs. One still hangs from a bent pole, the letters half gone. The words are unreadable, but you can guess. Everything here once pointed somewhere, to markets, to factories, to homes. Now all roads lead back to ruin. The cold gives the city a strange stillness, almost peaceful if you don't think about it too long. The wind sweeps through empty windows and out of open doors. Curtains of ice hang from ceilings like chandeliers. The snow softens the edges of everything, hiding the sharpness underneath. It looks quiet, calm even, until you realise that the shapes sticking out of the snow aren't stones. You step carefully over them. A helmet here, a boot there. Some have no owners anymore. You find yourself counting the ones you can see, then stop. There are too many, and you've started to memorise them by accident. That's dangerous. In Stalingrad, memory is something that hurts too much to keep warm. A small group of men cross the street ahead. They move quickly, heads low, rifles slung tight across their shoulders. You recognise one of them from the ration line. His face is thinner now, his eyes half closed from exhaustion. They vanish behind a collapsed wall, their footprints already filling with snow before you can call out. The city swallows everything. There's no colour anywhere. Even blood turns black before it hits the ground. The few things that once had pigment, brick, signs, uniforms, are coated in the same grey dust. You forget what green looks like, what blue feels like. The only flashes of colour come from fire, a flicker from a distant explosion, or a barrel burning somewhere down the street. Each one looks like a heartbeat that might not come again. You keep walking because stopping is worse. The act of moving keeps you warm, even if it's only slightly. You walk past an overturned truck, frozen to the street. Its tyres have cracked, its cab filled with snow. Inside, a pair of hands still grip the steering wheel. The face is gone, buried in frost. The scene looks staged, like a photograph left out too long. Further ahead, you see something that used to be a house. The front wall is missing, revealing a staircase that leads to nothing. A clock still hangs on a broken section of plaster, stopped forever at 4:17. You wonder what time it really is. You haven't checked in days. The sky looks the same morning or night. Only the cold changes, deepening as the hours crawl by. You hear a faint creak nearby. A section of roof gives way, sliding into the street in a quiet avalanche of snow and brick. The sound barely registers. You've become used to the city rearranging itself, collapsing in slow motion, piece by piece. The wind carries the dust upward in small swirls, blending it with the falling snow until you can't tell which is which. A few metres ahead, you spot what used to be a shop front. The glass is gone, but the sign above still clings to one hinge. Inside, there are shelves overturned, jars shattered. You step inside, the floor crunching beneath you. In one corner, something glints faintly under the ice. A spoon, maybe, or a piece of mirror. You crouch, brush away the frost, and see your reflection distorted in the curve of metal. Your face doesn't look like yours anymore. It's thin, hollow, the skin cracked at the lips, the eyes dull. You look older than you are? You put the spoon in your pocket anyway. You can use it later, maybe to eat, maybe to dig. Outside again, the snow thickens. The air feels heavier, as if the city itself is pressing down on you. You move towards the direction where the Volga should be, though the river is just another stretch of white now, its surface frozen solid. Somewhere under that ice lie supply routes, sunken boats, and men who tried to cross when it was too thin. You can't see them, but you feel their presence in the silence. Every building around you has a story, but none of them can be told anymore. The library burned months ago. The theatres are shells. The schools are barracks. Even the churches have lost their bells. The only rhythm left is artillery, distant but constant, marking time in explosions instead of hours. You pass by what used to be a park. The iron fence is twisted, the benches buried. Trees stand as blackened stumps. Beneath the snow, faint outlines of statues remain. Half faces, missing arms, torsos broken at the waist. The wind moves through them, like it's trying to remember what they were supposed to represent. In the distance, a dog barks once, then goes quiet. You don't know if it's real, or just the wind pretending. The city makes those sounds sometimes, echoes of things that aren't there anymore. You keep walking because stillness invites the cold to settle deeper into you. When you reach the edge of a wide street, you see the remnants of the Red October factory rising ahead, its frame jagged against the pale sky. Smoke still curls from somewhere deep inside, slow and steady, like breath from a giant that refuses to die. You head toward it, your boots sinking deeper with each step. The ground here is uneven, layered with debris that shifts underfoot. You find shelter under a section of collapsed roof, supported by steel beams. The air inside is warmer, or maybe just less cruel. A few of the soldiers are already there, sitting among piles of rubble, their faces lit by the dim orange glow of a small fire made from scraps of wood and broken furniture. You sit beside them, stretching your hands toward the heat. Nobody speaks for a while. The fire pops softly, throwing sparks that die in mid-air. The walls creak. You look around and see traces of what this place once was. Posters, fragments of slogans, bits of machinery. Someone has scratched a date into the wall, October 1942. You wonder if he's still alive somewhere nearby, or if the city has already folded him into itself. Outside, the wind shifts again. The snow swirls, dances, and resettles in new shapes. The ruins breathe, slowly and endlessly. You realise that Stalingrad isn't just destroyed, it's transforming. Everything living and dead, warm and cold, human and machine, has fused into one frozen landscape that no longer belongs to anyone. And in this landscape, you're just another moving piece of dust. One more shadow drifting through a city that remembers everything and forgives nothing. The fire flickers low, and the light fades from the metal walls until all that's left is grey again. The kind of grey that swallows sound, thought and memory alike. You lean back against the cold steel and close your eyes for a moment. The warmth on your palms feels faint but steady. Somewhere far away, another shell falls, shaking the ground in a soft tremor. The men don't react. You don't either. The city exhales, and the dust settles again. And as the wind presses against the ruins, you understand that this is what Stalingrad has become. Not a city anymore, not a battlefield even. Just a place made of ruins and frozen dust, where the living dig deeper each day, and the dead wait quietly beneath the snow for the rest to join them. You start to notice the ruins differently once you realise they're the only resource left. Every wall, every pile of debris, every frozen plank becomes potential shelter. You stop seeing destruction and start seeing material. It's the only way to keep living. You can't wait for new supplies, for orders, for building tools that no longer exist. Everything you need has already been bombed into pieces. The soldiers move through the wreckage like scavengers in a scrapyard. They walk bent, eyes scanning the ground for anything that might hold weight, trap air, or block wind. Nails are worth as much as bullets. Rope is gold. A sheet of tin is a roof. A broken door is insulation. The city provides, but only through ruin. You find a pile of bricks near what used to be a bakery. They're still warm to the touch, not from heat, but from friction. Someone has already been there, prying them loose. The ground is scattered with burned bread trays, warped and blackened. You pick up one of the trays and run your glove along its edge. The metal catches the light. Sharp, but usable. You slip it under your arm and move on. The air smells faintly of yeast and gunpowder. There's a sweetness underneath the smoke that doesn't belong here anymore, a ghost of what the building once was. It's almost unbearable. You turn away, eyes on the snow, and keep walking. Nearby, another group of men are working together to pull apart a collapsed roof. The wooden beams are frozen together, but they have shovels, crowbars, and stubbornness. They don't talk much, just grunt and breathe hard through scarves. Every sound they make echoes through the ruins, like it's the only noise left in the world. When one of them finally pries a beam loose, it breaks in half, revealing the darker, damp wood beneath. They carry the pieces off, 2 men at a time, dragging them like trophies. You follow the tracks they leave behind, and see where they're going. A shallow trench runs alongside a half-collapsed apartment block. Inside, there's a pit already dug out. The walls are lined with bricks. A makeshift roof covers half the space. Wood, iron sheets and cloth. Smoke rises from a small hole near the edge. You crawl closer and feel the faint warmth leaking out. Inside, it's cramped, but alive. 3 soldiers sit around a barrel with holes punched in the side. Flames flicker through them, faint and uneven. The smoke seeps through gaps in the roof, staining the snow above black. Someone's cooking something inside a tin can. It smells faintly of barley and salt. The men glance at you but don't speak. You nod, leave the metal tray on the ground as an offering, and back out again. That's how things work here now. Nothing belongs to anyone, but everything has value. You leave what you can, take what you need, and nobody asks questions. You keep moving through the rubble. The ground shifts under you, ice cracking, snow hiding holes deep enough to swallow a man. You step carefully, testing each patch before you trust it. The sound of artillery rolls through the air again, distant but familiar, a background rhythm. You stop noticing the direction. It's everywhere and nowhere at once. Your hands ache from gripping the shovel. The wooden handle is rough, the grain worn smooth by too many hands. You use it not just to dig, but to test the ground ahead, to lift debris, to prod for anything buried. Sometimes it finds bones. You move on without comment. Sometimes it finds tin, wood, or cloth. And then you dig harder. You reach the remains of an old tram depot. The tracks still lead in, half buried under snow. Inside it's dark and half collapsed, the roof sagging under its own weight. You hear the steady drip of melting snow somewhere deeper inside, slow and rhythmic. The air smells of rust, oil and whetstone. It's colder here, but still sheltered from the wind. You test a section of wall and find it solid. The concrete is cracked, but thick. You scrape away ice from the floor and see hard ground underneath. This could work. It's already half a shelter. You start clearing space, dragging aside twisted metal, pulling loose boards from the corners. Your breath fogs in front of you as you work, hanging in the air like smoke. Every now and then, you stop to listen. The city makes noises that aren't human, creaks, groans, small collapses that sound like sighs. The snow above shifts and settles again. You keep your eyes on the ceiling beams, waiting for any sign they might come down. They don't. Not yet. You find a section of wall where old posters still cling to the plaster. The faces are faded, their eyes half erased by soot. propaganda slogans barely legible beneath streaks of ice. You run your gloved hand over the paper and feel it crumble. For a second, you wonder if whoever printed it ever imagined the words surviving this long. Then you tear off a strip to use as kindling and move on. The depot floor yields a few useful things. A piece of wire, a length of pipe, half a plank that isn't completely rotten. You gather them into a pile near the wall. The beam overhead creaks again, snow dust falling like ash. You pause, watch the ceiling, then go back to work. By evening, if evening even means anything anymore, you have cleared enough space to crawl inside without crouching. You stack bricks along the open side, pressing them into the snow like mortar. The gaps you fill with scraps of cloth, cardboard, anything that traps air. You wedge the metal tray from the bakery across one corner as a windbreak. It clatters when you let it go, echoing through the chamber. The sound is too loud. Everything is too loud here. When you finally stop, the silence creeps back in. You sit on the cold ground, pull your scarf tighter, and listen to your own heartbeat. It sounds slow, heavy, deliberate, like the rhythm of something trying not to stop. Another soldier appears at the entrance. You recognize him by his shape, not his face. Everyone's face looks the same now, pale, cracked, coated in frost. He ducks inside, glances around, nods once. No words, just the kind of silent agreement that keeps people alive. He drops a piece of metal pipe near your pile and sits down. You share the space without ceremony. Together, you build a small fire in the corner. It takes a long time to catch. The wood is wet, the paper damp. You hold the match as close as you dare, shielding it with your hands, praying the air stays still. When it finally lights, the flame is small but steady. The shadows stretch across the walls, black and alive. The warmth doesn't reach far, but it's enough to feel the difference between freezing and surviving. You both watch it in silence. The other man rubs his hands slowly, staring into the flame like it's something sacred. After a long while, he mutters something under his breath. A curse? Maybe a prayer? The firelight flickers on his face, making his eyes shine like glass. You shift, adjust your coat, pull your knees to your chest. The heat from the fire barely touches you, but the air inside the depot feels thicker now. The walls block most of the wind. The snow outside hisses softly, a steady whisper against the roof. You can almost imagine being indoors again. Almost. Somewhere outside, a burst of gunfire snaps the silence, then fades into the distance. You don't react. The sound is constant now, part of the background, the city's pulse. You feed another scrap of wood into the flame and watch it catch. You realise that this is what scavenging has become, a kind of building made of leftovers. You're not constructing homes. You're repurposing the remains of what used to be life. The walls that once held classrooms, kitchens, factories, now hold you. The furniture that once warmed families now burns a few degrees of heat for soldiers. Everything here is second-hand, borrowed from the dead or the forgotten. You sit quietly, the fire popping, the air thick with smoke. The other soldier has already drifted into a shallow, twitching sleep. You stare at the ceiling, tracing the cracks with your eyes. The city above shifts, settling into itself again. The snow outside glows faintly through a gap, grey and pale. You pull your scarf over your mouth and breathe into it, recycling your own warmth. You try to remember what your hands felt like before they were numb all the time. You try to remember what quiet used to sound like before it was filled with artillery and creaking walls. You stare into the flame until the world around it fades. The fire moves like a heartbeat, soft, stubborn, alive. You feed it one more piece of wood, just enough to last until the next watch. You know you'll have to find more tomorrow. There's always another wall to pull down, another piece of someone else's life to steal for warmth. The snow shifts again outside, a low hiss like breath. The city doesn't sleep. It just waits, pressing down with the weight of its ruins. And in that pressure, you lie back against the cold concrete, eyes half closed, listening to the sound of the wind scraping across the broken tram rails. It's steady, almost rhythmic. The sound of Stalingrad breathing through its own remains. You drift for a moment, not sleeping, not waking, your body caught between shivering and stillness. The fire cracks again, and the faint warmth touches your face like a reminder that you're still here, still part of the rubble you're trying to hide inside. And tomorrow, when the light returns, not brighter, just different, you'll step back out into the frozen streets and look again. Because somewhere out there, under the snow and dust, there's always something left to build with. Something that isn't warm yet, but could be. The surface offers nothing anymore. Too open, too fragile, too exposed to the sky that drops shells and snow in equal measure. Above ground, everything dies fast. Fire burns out in seconds. Water freezes inside the pot. Even breath feels borrowed. So the soldiers begin to turn inward, downward, into the ground itself. The earth becomes the only thing that still listens. It's frozen solid at first, hard as stone, but beneath the top layer, there's softness if you keep digging. Not warmth exactly, just a kind of stillness that the wind can't touch. That's all anyone needs here. A place where the air doesn't move, and the world stops trying to erase you. They call them zemlyankas, earth shelters. Holes dug deep enough to hide men, lined with whatever scraps they can find. You see them appearing all over now, dotting the landscape like scars. At first they look like graves, because that's what they start as, pits in the ground. But inside, they're alive. Smoke curling out from pipes, muffled voices under the snow. The faint glow of fires burning things that were never meant to burn. You join a group working near the edge of the factory district. The snow there is packed hard, blackened by soot. The men have been digging for days already. The hole is waist deep, wide enough for 6 people to lie down if they don't mind touching shoulders. The walls are uneven but solid. A section of roof beam from a collapsed house lies across the top, supported by rusted pipes. Someone has covered it with tar paper scavenged from the ruins, then packed snow over it for insulation. It looks like nothing from the outside, just another mound of dirty snow. But when you crawl in, the air changes. It's heavy still, smelling of wet soil and smoke. The ceiling hangs low enough that you can feel the weight of the world above you. The floor is layered with branches, rags, and old sacks to keep it dry. A small fire burns in a hole in the corner, its smoke snaking up through a bent pipe. You feel the faint pull of warmth on your face, and for a second, it feels like being inside a heartbeat. The men inside move slowly, conserving energy. One sits by the fire, scraping frost off a piece of metal with a knife. Another lies against the wall, eyes closed, lips slightly open as he breathes shallowly. There's a pile of ammunition in one corner, a stack of frozen bread in another. Everything smells of smoke, gun oil, and human breath. You take your place near the entrance, knees pulled up, hands resting on your boots. The dirt feels damp through the cloth, but you don't move. You listen to the soft hiss of burning wood, to the sound of boots shifting in sleep. You can hear the faint drip of melted frost somewhere above, slow and steady. The ceiling occasionally groans. Each sound makes you glance up, half expecting it to collapse. But it holds. It always holds. Dirt has a strange strength when it's cold enough. The frost locks it in place. The weight that should crush you instead becomes your protection. You start to trust it in a way that feels unnatural. The earth above isn't just cover, it's life. Sometimes you forget how deep you are. The world outside feels distant, almost imaginary. The wind, the snow, the shells, they belong to another place. Down here it's quiet. You can even hear your own heartbeat if you stay still long enough. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, steady. The men talk in low voices when they do talk. About food mostly. About the next supply drop that never comes. About home, but only in fragments. Someone mentions his mother's stove, how it clicked before it lit. Someone else talks about the smell of bread when it came out of the oven. You close your eyes while they speak, not because you're tired, but because it helps you imagine the warmth they're describing. Outside, another explosion rolls through the ground. You feel it more than you hear it. The dirt shivers, dust falling from the ceiling. The men freeze for a moment, heads tilted upward, waiting. The noise fades. The earth settles again. No one says anything. You go back to breathing. In the days that follow, you start to understand the rhythm of life underground. Mornings don't exist. You wake when the air feels too heavy to sleep. You stoke the fire, feed it with pieces of broken furniture or floorboards scavenged from nearby ruins. You melt snow in a dented pot, watching it hiss and turn to water, then to steam. The smell of the fire mixes with damp soil, creating a scent that clings to everything. You keep a candle near your spot, though it burns too quickly. The light dances across the dirt walls, revealing small marks, scratches, initials, dates. The others have been carving into the earth itself, as if to remind it that humans are still inside it. You add your own mark one night, just a single line, then stop. It feels like tempting fate to write more. Every few hours, you crawl out to check the sky. The brightness hurts your eyes after the darkness. The air hits your face like a slap. You can smell burning from every direction. Wood, fuel, sometimes flesh. You stay up there only long enough to gather more scraps for the fire, then retreat back down again, lungs aching from the cold. The entrance to the shelter is covered with a tattered blanket and a slab of metal to block the wind. When you crawl through it, your body moves from one world to another. Above, chaos. Below, quiet. It feels almost safe, and that feeling is dangerous. You start to depend on it, crave it. The earth becomes your home because it's the only place left that doesn't hate you. The others begin expanding the dugouts, clawing at the sides with shovels and bare hands. The walls crumble easily at first, then freeze solid again overnight. They line the new sections with boards, reinforce the ceiling with whatever beams they can find. It's slow work but methodical. Everyone knows what they're doing without speaking. The body remembers what safety feels like and builds toward it automatically. You find yourself memorizing the texture of the soil, how it smells different when it's been turned, how the cold changes its colour from brown to grey. You learn to tell when the ceiling is too thin, when the ground above is shifting. You become part of the dirt, listening to it breathe. One afternoon, when the wind outside dies down, you can hear something strange, a faint tapping, distant but rhythmic. The men stop working. You all listen. The sound comes from below, Or maybe from another dugout nearby. Someone else digging. The thought brings a kind of comfort. The ground is full of people, hidden veins of life running beneath the frozen city. Later, when you crawl out for air, you notice small trails of smoke rising from the snow across the street. Each one marks another shelter, another group of men living under the same earth. The whole city has gone underground now, like an animal burrowing through winter. You realise that if you could see beneath the surface, Stalingrad would look alive again. Not from buildings or fires, but from the slow movement of people trying not to die. Back inside, the heat from the fire builds. It's not much, but enough to make the air humid. The walls drip, small beads of moisture sliding down the packed earth. The smell of dampness fills your lungs. You close your eyes and listen to the tiny sounds of the place. Crackling wood, slow breathing, the shuffle of boots against dirt. It's the sound of existence pared down to its smallest form. At night, the temperature drops again. Frost creeps across the walls in thin veins, glittering faintly in the firelight. You pull your blanket tighter, feeling its roughness against your neck. The man beside you turns in his sleep, muttering softly. His breath makes small clouds in the air. You shift closer to share what little warmth you both have, and the earth presses down from above, heavy and constant. You can feel its weight through the roof, through the floor, through your bones. But instead of fear, it brings a kind of calm. You're hidden from the wind, from the shells, from the endless white that wants to consume everything. Here, inside the ground, time slows. Sometimes, when you close your eyes, you can almost pretend this is just another kind of house. The ceiling low, the walls close, the smell of smoke the same as any stove. You forget the sky, the city, the war. For a few moments, it's just you and the dirt, sharing each other's warmth. The fire burns low, the shadows stretch longer. Someone adds another handful of twigs, and the light flares, catching on the moisture that drips from the ceiling. It looks like stars if you let your eyes unfocus. A whole night sky hidden underground. You breathe in the damp air, slow and steady. Your back rests against the packed soil, and it feels firm, almost comforting. Above, the snow keeps falling. The city shifts and sighs, pressing itself deeper into silence. And you sit in your small hollow, surrounded by the earth that has become your shelter, your wall, your blanket, your home. Tomorrow you'll dig a little deeper. You always do. Because here, the only direction left that still feels safe is down. The first dugouts begin as accidents. Holes for cover, pits for bodies, shallow craters carved by explosions that someone decides to crawl into and not crawl back out of. At first, they're temporary, just places to wait until the shelling stops. But nothing ever really stops here. The bombardment comes in waves, constant, endless, until the difference between shelter and home becomes too small to care about. The hole you sleep in one night becomes the one you live in for the next month. It starts with instinct. Men dig where they stand, shovels, helmets, hands. The ground is frozen, but they keep digging. The deeper they go, the quieter it gets. The wind fades first, then the screams, then the city itself. You can still feel the bombs through the earth, small tremors rolling through the dirt like distant thunder. But it's duller here, manageable. The cold, though, it follows you. The deeper you dig, the more it clings, turning the air heavy, damp, and still. The first versions are crude. Holes just wide enough for one person to crouch in, lined with boards or broken furniture. The walls sweat moisture that freezes when the fire goes out. The roof is anything you can drag. Metal sheets, doors, chunks of concrete stacked on top of each other. You learn quickly that the thicker the roof, the better. Not just for warmth, but for survival. The sound of debris hitting above your head becomes familiar, almost comforting. It means you're still underneath it, still breathing. You help dig one near the tractor factory. The soil there is mixed with brick dust and old oil. Every scoop of dirt smells like burned machines. It's slow work. The shovels bounce off the frozen top layer, and you have to chip it away piece by piece. Steam rises from your breath, from your shoulders, from the small patches of earth that still hold moisture. By nightfall, you've gone down nearly a metre. The edges of the pit are jagged, and your hands are blistered through your gloves. But when you climb out and look down into it, you can already picture the roof, the fire, the small patch of darkness that will be yours. Someone finds wooden planks in the ruins nearby. Pieces of staircases, cabinet doors, anything flat. You drag them over, lay them across the top of the hole, and cover them with snow and debris until they disappear into the landscape. From above, it looks like nothing. That's the point. You crawl inside, lie down, and let your body sink into the earth's cold embrace. The air is stale but still. You can hear your own pulse again. You light a small fire, using paper from a burned ledger, the pages curling and blackening one by one. The flame casts a dull orange glow on the dirt walls, and for the first time in days, you can see colour. It flickers against the soil, turning it gold for a heartbeat, then brown again. The dugout isn't warm, not really. The air near the fire feels soft, almost gentle, but beyond that circle of light, the cold presses in from all sides. Your breath hangs thick in the air. The smoke curls upward and escapes through a narrow vent in the roof. A pipe made from a bent rifle barrel. It rattles occasionally when the wind catches it. The smell of smoke clings to everything. Your clothes, your hair, your hands. It mixes with the scent of damp soil until it becomes something new. Something you'll never forget. You fall asleep with your back against the dirt wall, the heat from the fire fading slowly. The ground beneath you hums with faint vibrations. Artillery, bombs, maybe tanks moving somewhere far away. The earth carries the sound differently than air. It doesn't echo, it seeps in. You dream of digging, of shovels and frozen soil, of falling through layers of dirt into silence. When you wake, it's darker than before. The fire is out. Your breath forms clouds that drift and disappear into the blackness. The roof creaks softly. Somewhere above, snow slides off the mound with a low hiss. You crawl to the entrance, push the flap aside, and the cold hits you like a physical thing. The sky outside is white-grey, and the ruins shimmer faintly under a skin of frost. You blink against the light, and for a moment it feels like emerging from another world. By midday, the others have begun copying the design. Dozens of holes appear across the snow-covered streets, each one a variation on the same idea. Earth walls, makeshift roof, small fire hole. Some are large enough for 10 men, others barely fit one. They spread through the ruins like an underground city, invisible unless you know where to look. The smoke rising from their vents marks the only signs of life. You visit one of the larger ones near the river. It's built into the side of a crater, reinforced with stones and metal beams scavenged from a collapsed bridge. Inside, the ceiling is high enough to stand in. There's a wooden plank for a table, a pile of straw for bedding. Someone has even hung a lantern from a wire on the ceiling. Its light glows faintly, making the space feel almost civilized. The men inside talk quietly, voices echoing off the dirt. They've carved shelves into the walls to hold supplies. Bread, cartridges, tin cans. Everything is organised, careful, deliberate. You can tell they've been here for weeks. The earth around them is smooth from use, polished by hands and breath. It's strange to think of dirt as polished, but it is. The constant heat from the fire bakes it into a hard shell, smooth and dry. When you touch it, it feels warm. They've even made a door. A plank on hinges, covered with cloth to block the draft. You help them patch a hole in the roof, pressing mud into cracks like mortar. The mud freezes instantly, sealing the gaps. When you sit by the fire afterward, someone offers you a tin of hot water. Not tea, just melted snow. It tastes like iron and ash. You drink it slowly, savouring the faint warmth that slides down your throat. Later, outside, you see more shelters being built along the trench line. Each one a small universe. Smoke curls up from every corner of the ruins, blending with the fog. From above, Stalingrad must look alive again, glowing faintly from within, breathing through its hidden veins. You keep working on your own dugout, adding small improvements. A second vent. A small hole in the floor for drainage. You line the walls with fabric torn from old uniforms. You find an empty ammunition box and turn it into a stool. Every addition feels like progress. A rebellion against the cold and the chaos. The days blur together underground. You lose track of time. The light outside changes only slightly, from pale to darker pale. You mark time by the fire. Each time it burns out, you start again. Each time it flickers low, you feel the day ending. One evening, while feeding the fire, you notice a spider crawling along the dirt wall. It moves slowly, its legs delicate against the rough surface. You watch it for a long time, mesmerised. The idea that something so fragile can live down here makes you feel something you can't name. You leave it alone. You've learned that everything here, no matter how small, is fighting the same battle you are. The sound of artillery returns in waves. The ground shakes, dust falls from the ceiling, the fire flickers. You brace yourself, pressing your hands against the wall. The earth holds, it always does. The dirt absorbs the impact, dulls the noise, turns chaos into vibration. That's why you stay below. The world above is sharp and deadly. The one below is blunt but survivable. When the shaking stops, you sit back and listen to the silence that follows. It's deep, thick, almost tangible. You realise that the earth doesn't just protect you, it hides you. From the cold, from the noise, from yourself. It swallows everything and gives nothing back. The dugout becomes a rhythm. You wake, tend the fire, dig a little more, scavenge what you can, then return. Each night you crawl inside, close the flap, and let the world shrink to the size of this hole. The air smells of damp soil and smoke, the same every day. It clings to you, to your clothes, to your skin. You stop noticing it. Soon, the ground itself begins to change. The heat from the fire and the moisture from your breath soften the dirt near the walls. You scrape it smooth, pack it down again. The colour darkens, turning almost black. You can tell where each man sits by the shape worn into the wall behind him. The dugout remembers everyone who passes through it, shaping itself around them. One night, while sitting by the dying fire, you realise something simple. You no longer think of this place as a hole. It's become a room. It has corners, light, warmth, and silence. It shelters you from death. That's more than most things in this city can claim. The next morning, snow covers everything again. You crawl out and brush it from the roof, clearing the vent. The air is crisp, the sky low and heavy. You can see the faint glow of other fires in the distance, small columns of smoke twisting upward through the ruins. It looks like the city is exhaling. You stand there for a moment, breathing it in. The smell of smoke, of frozen air, of earth. It's the smell of the war itself. Burnt, cold, patient. Then you crouch, crawl back into the dugout, and close the world above you away again. The fire crackles softly. The dirt walls breathe. You pull your blanket tight, rest your head against the ground, and listen to the muffled heartbeat of Stalingrad, somewhere far above. Down here, beneath the snow and the broken streets, life goes on. Hidden, fragile, but real. The birth of the dugout isn't just the beginning of a shelter. It's the birth of a new kind of living, one that belongs to the earth now. And as you drift towards sleep, the firelight fading into the walls, you understand that you're not escaping the city anymore. You're becoming part of it, buried within its skin, breathing its slow, cold breath from underneath. At some point, you stop calling it building. It's not construction anymore. It's scavenging, improvising, repurposing, surviving. The idea of structure, of design, of plans, died months ago with the last load of supplies that never made it across the river. What's left is instinct and desperation. You build not because you know how, but because you have to. There's nothing left that hasn't been broken, burned, or buried. Every plank, every nail, every scrap of metal has already been fought over 100 times. The city is a carcass, and you're one of the scavengers picking through the remains, pulling warmth out of bones. You start to see the ruins differently, learning the value of things no one used to notice. A length of wire twisted into shape becomes a hinge. A piece of a window frame becomes a support beam. A spoon can be bent into a hook. Every object carries the memory of what it was, but you don't care. It's what it can be that matters now. You begin your search before dawn, when the air is still, and the frost hasn't yet settled on everything. The streets are a wasteland of shadows, the snow layered with ash and glass. The smell of smoke lingers from the night's bombardment. You move quietly, not because anyone's listening, but because the silence feels too thick to disturb. Each step sinks into the crusted snow with a sound that's almost polite. You start at the edges of the rubble where the buildings have fallen inward, but left the corners standing. Those corners hide the best material. You pry loose bricks, one by one, stacking them in your bag until it's too heavy to carry. The edges bite into your gloves. The cold makes everything brittle. Your breath freezes in the scarf around your mouth, turning the fabric stiff. You find a section of wall where the plaster has peeled back, revealing the laths beneath. Thin strips of wood nailed in patterns. You pull at one, and it breaks halfway, splinters flying. You keep going. The splinters sting your palms, but they're small, dry, perfect for starting fires. You fill your pockets with them, then move on. There's a wrecked truck half buried in snow near the corner of what used to be a shop. The cab is crushed, but the back is still intact. You climb inside, kicking snow off the metal floor. It smells like oil and rust. There's a tarp tangled near the edge, stiff and frozen. You tug at it until it comes loose, the sound tearing through the air like fabric breaking in slow motion. It's too stiff to fold, but you roll it anyway and drag it behind you. You'll thaw it later, shape it into a roof or a blanket. Further down, you find metal rods sticking out of a collapsed balcony. You hit them with a rock until they snap. The pieces scatter across the ground, ringing softly. You gather them up, sliding them through your belt. They'll make good supports for the dugout roof if you can get them straight. Every time you stop moving, you start to freeze. The air finds every gap in your coat, every tear in your gloves. You keep walking, one step at a time, until your legs ache. The sky overhead is pale, the same colour as the snow. It's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. When you pass what used to be an apartment block, you hear the faint crack of ice under your boots. You freeze, listen. Then a chunk of wall slides free from above, landing a few metres away in a cloud of dust and snow. You move faster after that, careful not to look up again. You find a section of fence still standing, its iron bars twisted but upright. You grab one and pull. It bends but doesn't break. You rock it back and forth, the metal groaning, until it gives way with a sharp crack. You drag it with you, leaving a trail in the snow. The sound echoes off the empty buildings like a voice calling out your presence, but there's no one left to hear. When you reach your shelter again, you drop everything by the entrance. The tarp, the rods, the wood, the scraps of metal, all of it lies in a heap, covered in frost and dirt. It doesn't look like much. It never does. But you know what each piece means. You know what each one will become. You start with the roof. The old boards have begun to sag under the weight of snow. You slide the metal rods beneath them, wedging them against the dirt walls. They groan under pressure, but hold. You pack snow on top, sealing the gaps. When the wind blows across it, the sound changes. Softer now. The air no longer whistles through the cracks. Next, the tarp. You stretch it over the entrance, hammering it into place with a rock. The fabric cracks as you move it, flakes of ice breaking loose and falling into your face. When it's finally secure, you step back and look at it. The entrance no longer gapes open to the cold. It's not beauty you've built, but function. It's ugly, uneven, patched with rope and wire. But it holds. Inside you sit by the fire pit and feed it with the broken pieces of wood from your pocket. The flames catch slowly, licking the air with a weak glow. The smoke drifts up through the pipe and escapes. You watch it go, wondering where it ends up. Maybe it joins the other plumes that rise all over the city, blending into the haze that never leaves the sky. The warmth spreads unevenly. Your hands thaw first, then your face. The rest of your body stays cold, the kind of cold that never fully leaves. You stretch your fingers, feeling blood return in sharp, painful bursts. It's almost worse than the numbness, but at least it means you're still alive. You check your tools, what little there are. A broken shovel, a knife with half a blade, a length of wire you pulled from the wreckage. You keep them near the fire so the metal doesn't freeze solid again. You remember when tools were easy, when you could just reach for what you needed. Now every object has to earn its place. Nothing is wasted, not even the fragments. The others come in later, carrying their own piles of debris. One has a piece of brick wrapped in cloth. Another brings a window frame. They drop them beside the fire, then sit, breathing heavily. Nobody speaks. You can read their thoughts in their movements. Each piece of scrap is a small victory. Each one means another hour of heat, another inch of wall. You take turns fitting the pieces together. The wood goes against the dirt, the brick behind it. The metal supports lean across the top. You seal the gaps with mud, pressing it in with your fingers. It hardens instantly, freezing to the touch. When you step back, the structure looks like a patchwork of colour and texture. Grey, brown, black, all dulled by frost. It shouldn't hold, but it does. The sound of wind outside changes again. It's quieter now, the cold pushed back by a few centimetres of effort. You all sit there, listening to the silence. The fire crackles softly, and for a moment, it feels like peace. Someone takes out a nail and drives it into the wall with the butt of a rifle. From his pocket, he pulls a small piece of cloth, a scrap of something once red, and hangs it there. No one asks why. Maybe it's a reminder of colour. Maybe it's just something to look at besides dirt. You watch it sway gently in the draft, and it almost feels alive. Later, when you step outside again, the city looks different. The smoke from the dugouts rises like breath from sleeping giants. Every mound of snow hides life beneath it. The wind cuts through the ruins, but softer now, as if even it's tired of fighting. You walk among the scattered shelters, each one unique, each one made from the same absence. The sight is strange and beautiful in its own way. Out of nothing, people have built something. Not much, not enough to be called civilization, but enough to be called endurance. The sun hangs low, a pale disk barely visible through the haze. The light turns the snow to glass, and the whole city glows faintly. You stand there for a long moment, letting the wind numb your face again. You look at what you've built, what everyone has built, and realise that the city has been rebuilt. Not upward, but inward, into the ground, into the spaces between destruction. The fire smoke rises higher, joining the grey sky. The ruins breathe, slow and heavy. You pull your coat tighter, turn back toward the dugout, and disappear inside, leaving only your footprints to mark that you were ever above ground at all. Inside, the air is warm again. The tarp rustles softly in the wind. The fire burns steady, its light spilling across the dirt walls. You sit in silence, staring into it, listening to the faint hum of life hidden all around you. There's still nothing left to build with, but somehow there's always enough to keep building. You learn early that roofs aren't built for comfort anymore. They're armour, docker the only thing between you and the sky. A sky that spits metal, ice, and fire without warning. Overhead, the world is always breaking. Planes pass low. Their engines a dull growl that shakes the air. Shells whistle and crack, glass falls, snow follows. The open sky used to mean air, light, something human. Now it means exposure. It means death. So you learn to build roofs from what's left, from the bones of the city. You start with what you can carry: planks, beams, warped metal, broken doors. None of it fits together properly, but that doesn't matter. Gaps mean drafts, and drafts mean you're still alive to feel them. Perfection is a luxury no one can afford. Survival, on the other hand, is built from imperfection. The first step is strength. The walls of the dugout are soft, frozen dirt mixed with ash. You press iron rods into the top, crossing them like ribs. On top of that, you lay planks scavenged from staircases and window frames. They creak under your weight, but they hold. When you run out of wood, you use bricks. When you run out of bricks, you use debris. A section of a car door, a piece of factory siding, chunks of concrete pried from the street. Anything that blocks the sky. You wedge it all together, sealing the gaps with rags soaked in mud. The mud freezes instantly, locking the pieces in place. The ceiling is low, uneven, heavy enough that you can hear it breathe when the wind shifts. Sometimes it drips, the moisture from your own fire collecting and falling back down on your head. You get used to that sound, the slow rhythm of earth sweating above you. From the outside, the roof looks like part of the landscape. Snow piles on top of it, blending it into the ruin. That's the goal. You don't want it to stand out. The moment it looks like shelter, it becomes a target. So you make it ugly. You make it look dead. You scatter broken glass on top. Toss a few charred boards across it. Cover the rest with dust and snow. From a distance, it's just another scar on the city's surface. Inside, you listen. The sound of the roof is a language now. You know what it means when the snow shifts. A soft hiss. You know the brittle crack when ice forms and splits. You know the sharp, dry tap of shrapnel bouncing off the metal sheets. Each noise tells you something about how close the danger is. When shells fall nearby, the entire roof vibrates, dust raining from the ceiling. You press your back to the wall, close your eyes, and wait. You can feel the pressure wave travel through the dirt, through the beams, through your bones. The fire flickers, the smoke curls differently for a moment, then the air settles again. The earth groans but doesn't give. You breathe. You spend hours adjusting the roof, tightening supports, adding weight to balance against collapse. It's slow work, done in silence. The others help when they can, but most of the time it's just you, hammering with rocks, wedging pieces into place, listening for the right sound, the one that means it's holding. You develop a strange trust in the rubble. You learn to feel its strength through your palms, to read its shifting moods. The dirt walls meet the roof unevenly. In some places, light seeps through, faint grey lines that flicker with each passing explosion. You patch them with cloth, with paper, with the lining of your coat. Anything to keep the cold from finding its way in. At night, when the wind presses hard against the outside, you can hear it testing every corner, looking for a weakness. Sometimes it finds one, and a thin stream of air slides through, chilling your neck as you sleep. You roll away, cover the hole with your sleeve, and keep breathing. The smell of the dugout never changes. Smoke, damp, oil, and men. The fire blackens the roof, leaving streaks of soot that hang like shadows. When the wood dries out too much, it pops, sending sparks against the metal sheets. Each one leaves a small mark, a tiny reminder of heat in a place built to keep heat out. Outside, you can see what roofs mean in this city. Every structure that still stands wears its wounds on top. Buildings with open ceilings fill with snow. The upper floors of apartments sag inward, their beams snapped. You pass one that's half collapsed, the top floor peeled away. Inside, furniture is frozen mid-air, hanging at angles that make no sense. Chairs embedded in walls, a table half sunk into a floor that isn't there anymore. The world above has become vertical chaos, and the only direction that makes sense is down. You watch men repairing their own dugouts nearby. One uses a section of tank tread as a roof beam. Another drags the hood of a car across the top of his shelter, hammering it into place with a pipe. The metal rings with every hit, echoing through the ruins. They don't speak to each other. There's no need. The rhythm of their work is enough. A slow, steady percussion that keeps everyone anchored. You help one of them lift a sheet of steel into place. It's cold and heavy, the edges jagged. Together you heave it upward, rest it across a frame of broken planks. It lands with a thud, the sound dull and final. He nods once, eyes rimmed with frost, and hands you a handful of nails scavenged from a burned building. You hammer them in with a rock, each strike sending a vibration up your arm. When you finish, you both step back and look at it. It's crooked, uneven, but solid. The wind howls across the ruins, catching on the metal. The sound is strange, part whistle, part moan. You can feel it through your boots. He smiles faintly, as if hearing a song he recognises, and mutters something you can't make out. You nod anyway, then walk back toward your own shelter. When you crawl inside again, the fire's still alive, small but steady. The roof hums softly in the wind. You lie down, close your eyes, and listen to it. The noise has become familiar now, almost soothing. It's the sound of resistance, the world above clawing at the edges of your small refuge and failing to get in. You drift in and out of sleep, half dreaming, half listening. Sometimes, in that in-between state, the sounds blur together. The creak of the roof, the murmur of wind, the faint, distant thunder of artillery. They merge into something like breathing. The city's breathing. Slow, heavy, constant. You wake hours later to the sound of something sliding. Snow, maybe, or debris. The light from the fire flickers against the roof, revealing a thin crack where the boards have shifted. You reach up, press your palm against it. Cold air leaks through. You can feel the vibration of the storm outside, the faint rattle of hail or shrapnel against the roof. You hold your hand there until the shaking stops, then pack the gap with mud. It freezes instantly under your touch. The firelight flickers again, and you see frost forming on the metal seams overhead. The whole roof glistens faintly, catching the orange light like distant stars. For a moment, it looks beautiful. Then the light fades, and it's just ice again. You sit up, feed the fire, listen to the smoke whisper through the vent. The heat rises, hits the ceiling, and spreads out across the surface, melting a thin layer of frost. The water drips down the wall, slow, steady, rhythmic. You watch each drop fall and think of the world above, how nothing stays solid for long. Everything breaks, melts, shifts, and freezes again. You close your eyes, lean back, and breathe. The air tastes of dirt and metal. The roof creaks once more, the sound deep and familiar. You no longer flinch when it does that. It's a reminder that it's still holding, that the rubble and ruin you've gathered are stronger than the cold and the bombs. Outside, the city burns in places you can't see. Inside, you have your fire, your walls, your roof of rubble. It's enough to survive another night. Enough to stay hidden from the sky that keeps trying to erase you. The wind rises again, sweeping across the ruins, pushing snow against the metal, piling it higher. You listen to it, eyes half closed, the world above muffled by the weight of your own creation. The earth shifts slightly under you, settling. The dugout breathes, the roof holds, and for now, that's all that matters. Frostbite doesn't arrive suddenly. It seeps in quietly, the same way sleep does when you're too tired to fight it. It begins at the edges. Fingers, toes, ears. Parts of you furthest from the fire. At first it's just numbness, a faint, dull ache that you can ignore if you stay busy. But it spreads slowly, patient, crawling inward with each hour you spend outside. You stop noticing where pain ends and cold begins. Then one morning, you wake and realise you can't feel your hands at all. The men talk about it without emotion. Everyone has stories. Fingers that went black, toes that fell off in boots, faces that blistered and turned to leather. You've seen it yourself. The skin changes colour. White at first, then blue, then a greyish black that looks more like wood than flesh. You rub your hands together constantly, press them near the fire until they sting. The pain means blood. The pain means you're still alive. Fire is the only medicine here, but it's dangerous. It gives warmth, and it gives you away. You can't have one without risking the other. The smoke rises through vents and cracks, thin columns that betray your position to anyone watching. You know this, but you light the fire anyway, because without it, you won't last the night. You learn to make fires small, controlled. You feed them with shavings, twigs, bits of cloth dipped in oil. The goal isn't light, it's temperature. The flame should be low enough to barely cast a shadow, just enough to thaw your fingers, to melt the edge of a tin of food, to remind you that heat is still possible. You cover the vent at night, let the smoke filter through layers of snow. It escapes slowly, diffused, disguised as steam. But sometimes, when the wind dies, it lingers. It curls upward, a grey thread against a white sky. You watch it from outside, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the air. You can see it betraying you, rising like a signal to the world that someone still lives here. You curse it, but you need it. Every breath of that smoke means another hour of warmth, another chance to keep your hands from dying. Inside, the fire crackles softly. You sit close enough to feel the heat on your face, but not so close that your skin cracks. You hold your hands out, fingers trembling, feeling the sting as life returns to them. The skin turns red, the pain sharp. You grit your teeth and wait for it to pass. Around you the others do the same. Faces blank, eyes half closed, the silence is thick. The sound of fire is the only thing that feels alive. One of the men unwraps his foot. The skin beneath the cloth is grey, shiny, cracked. He touches it and winces. The others look away. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to do. He wraps it again, tighter this time, and sits back down. The firelight reflects on his face, making the sweat on his forehead look like frost. When the wind shifts, the smoke drifts back into the dugout. You cough, eyes watering. It burns your throat, fills your lungs with the taste of ash and oil. You wave it away, but it doesn't matter. You'll breathe it again in a few minutes. Every man here smells the same. Smoke, sweat, soil, and something else beneath it all, something that clings to the skin no matter how long you stay underground. Sometimes the smoke hides you. The city above is filled with it, from fires, from explosions, from everything that still burns. Your small fire becomes invisible in the haze. Other times, when the air clears and the sky opens up, it becomes a target. You've seen what happens when the enemy spots it. A shell lands close, and the ground erupts, the dugout collapses. You dig again after that, deeper each time, until the sky forgets where you are. You learn tricks to hide it. You build bends in the vent, so the smoke twists and cools before it leaves. You mix wet earth with ash to trap the smell. You burn slowly, carefully, always listening for the wind. The wind is your ally if you respect it. It carries your secret away, disperses it among the ruins. When it stops blowing, you let the fire die down and wait. The cold never waits, though. It creeps in immediately. You feel it along your spine first, a slow tightening that makes your muscles ache. Then your hands stiffen, your breath fogs heavy, your eyelids feel like glass. Feel You reach for the fire again, but the flame has already dimmed to a glow. You feed it one more scrap of wood and watch it struggle. The smoke thickens, curls upward, hesitates, then slips into the vent. You follow it with your eyes, knowing that it's a double-edged prayer. Life for you. Danger for everyone around you. The air inside grows heavy. The ceiling lowers with condensation. You can see frost forming in corners where the fire's warmth can't reach. The walls glisten, damp and black. The ground feels softer beneath your boots. You dig small trenches along the edges to drain the meltwater. The smell of dampness mixes with the smoke until you can't tell where one ends and the other begins. At night, when you close your eyes, you can still see the flame flickering against your eyelids. It's burned into your vision. The sound of it, the smell of it, the way it shifts when someone breathes too close, it all becomes part of you. The fire is your pulse now, fragile and steady. You sleep with one ear tuned to it, waking at every crackle. Frostbite works quietly while you rest. You can feel it working on the tips of your ears, the edges of your feet. The numbness returns, soft at first, then deep. You don't even bother pulling your boots off anymore. You know what you'll find. The others do the same. Everyone pretends they don't notice. In the morning the fire has gone out. The air inside is sharp, still, colourless. You can see your breath moving through it like mist. The first thing you do is check your hands, flex your fingers. They move, stiff but obedient. You rub them together until you feel the burn of circulation. It's like waking from a nightmare into another one. You crawl outside, your coat stiff with frost. The sky is pale, the wind cutting through the ruins like a blade. Smoke rises from other dugouts nearby, thin trails twisting upward. You can tell who's still alive by where the smoke still climbs. You look at each one, counting, though you don't know why. It's just something to do. When you go back inside, you light the fire again. The match flares, your fingers shake. The flame catches, small at first, then steady. The air warms slowly, unevenly. The smoke fills the vent again, whispering its way out into the world. You breathe it in, cough once, and smile despite yourself. It's the same every day. Smoke, frost, fire, survival. The roof creaks overhead as snow slides down its surface. You sit near the flame, holding your hands over it, turning them slowly, feeling the sting return. You close your eyes and listen to the rhythm, the soft crackle of wood, the faint hiss of burning fabric, the quiet pulse of heat against cold. You know the fire will give you away eventually. Everything does here. Sound, light, breath. They all lead back to you, if someone's patient enough. But the cold kills faster than bullets. So you take the risk every night, every morning. You light the fire again and again, daring the sky to notice. The smoke curls upwards, a thin grey line in a white world. You watch it drift, fade, disappear. Then you lean closer to the flame, feeling it lick at your skin. And for a moment the frost recedes, the pain returns, the blood moves, you're still here. The dugout hums softly around you, breathing with the rhythm of the fire. The city above groans in the distance, its voice lost in the wind. And beneath it all, you sit in your small circle of light, surrounded by frostbite, by fire, by smoke, hiding in plain sight from a world that no longer remembers warmth. The smell of Stalingrad never leaves you. It settles into the seams of your clothes, into your hair, into the pores of your skin until it becomes part of who you are. It's a mixture of everything that defines life here. Sweat, mud, smoke, and something metallic that no one talks about but everyone recognises. It's the smell of survival stripped of anything human. You notice it most when you first wake. The air in the dugout is thick, stale, unmoving. The fire's gone out again, and the scent of smoke lies heavy over everything. You can taste it on your tongue, dry and bitter. The soil walls sweat moisture, and it mixes with the scent of wet wool, of boots that never dry, of men who haven't washed in weeks. You stop flinching at it. After a while it becomes normal, something your mind stops separating into parts. Every movement stirs the air. The faint musk of damp uniforms, the sweet rot of old bandages, the sharp edge of fuel soaked into cloth. Someone near the fire stirs, pulls off his gloves, and the air fills with the scent of skin that's been too long in the cold. Leathered, cracked, and raw. You shift slightly and release another layer of trapped smells from your blanket. It's heavy with smoke and sweat, with earth, with the faint sourness of breath exhaled into fabric night after night. No one comments on it. No one could. It's the same in every dugout, every shelter, every place men gather to stay alive. The smell is a kind of truth, proof that you're still breathing. When someone opens the entrance flap, a gust of wind pushes through, cutting the air like a knife. For a brief second, you catch the scent of the outside world. Frozen dust, burned wood, diesel smoke from a truck that hasn't moved in days. It's different, but not better. Just sharper. The cold air carries the memory of the city's death with it, and when it fades, you almost miss it. The smell of mud dominates everything. It's in your boots, your coat, your hair. It sticks to you, drying in layers that never fully come off. The dugouts are built from it, the trenches cut into it. You dig it, sleep in it, breathe it. It changes with temperature. When frozen, it smells faintly of stone. When it thaws near the fire, it releases something more organic, like rot. The heat pulls the scent of old things out of it. Roots, oil, blood, the faint sweetness of decay. The fire, when it burns, adds its own flavour. Wood is rare, so you burn whatever you can find. Furniture, broken crates, scraps of floorboards, even paper and cloth. Each burns differently. Wet wood crackles and smokes. Fabric gives off a smell like burning hair. Paper smells faintly sweet before it turns bitter. Everything leaves soot behind, a fine black dust that coats your hands and face until your skin feels rough and grainy. Fuel is precious, but you use it when you must. A few drops of gasoline or kerosene poured on frozen wood, the sharp chemical sting that follows, the brief flare of blue flame before it settles into orange. That smell, burnt fuel, acrid and cold, lingers in your nose long after the fire goes out. It mixes with the others until you can't tell where one ends. You wipe your hands on your coat and it releases more of it. The smell of oil soaked into fabric, of dirt pressed deep into the weave. The sleeves are stiff, the cuffs shiny from grime. Every coat here is the same, dark, heavy and fragrant, with the history of too many days spent underground. When you step outside, the air feels cleaner but emptier. The wind scrapes across the ruins, carrying with it the smoke of countless small fires. Each has its own scent: burning fuel, frozen corpses, gunpowder. The combination forms something indescribable, a perfume of exhaustion and survival. It clings to the city like a fog. You walk through the ruins, and each step releases new layers. The crunch of frozen mud beneath your boots sends up faint puffs of dust that smell like old plaster and ash. When the wind shifts, it brings the odour of metal. Tanks left, half buried, machine split open, fuel leaking into the snow. The snow absorbs everything, turning grey, then black. You can smell it, even when it looks clean. Cold doesn't erase scent, it preserves it. Somewhere nearby, someone burns rags soaked in oil for heat. The smoke rises thick and black, drifting low to the ground. You walk through it, your eyes watering. The air tastes like tar. You cough once, twice, then keep walking. The smell sticks to you, follows you back underground. Back inside, the scent of men takes over again. It's stronger now, more concentrated in the confined space. The heat from the fire releases it from the walls, from the blankets, from your skin. The combination is suffocating, but it's also familiar. You've learned that this is what life smells like when there's nothing clean left. You can identify people by scent now. The man who sleeps beside the entrance smells of wet earth and tobacco. The one by the fire smells of grease and sweat. The officer carries the faint odour of paper and fuel from writing reports by candlelight. You've stopped noticing your own smell altogether. You only smell absence when someone leaves, when a space goes cold, when a dugout becomes empty. That's when you realise what it's like without the smell of men. It's quieter, emptier, worse. Sometimes when the fire burns low and the air grows thick, you think of home. Not clearly, just fragments, soap, wood polish, boiled potatoes, the faint scent of clean linen. You try to recall them fully, but they don't fit anymore. The memories feel foreign, too light, too soft. You've been breathing in dirt and fuel for so long that purity feels impossible. The fire pops, sending a burst of smoke into the air. It carries the smell of burning oil, sweet and bitter at once. You close your eyes and breathe it in deeply. It stings your lungs, but it's real. Everything real here hurts a little. You move closer to the flame, hands stretched forward, palms blackened from soot. The heat releases sweat from your skin, and for a moment you can smell yourself beneath the smoke. It's sharp, sour, human. You rub your hands together, and the scent intensifies. The others do the same. Small motions in the silence, as if confirming they still exist. The dugout hums with quiet breathing, the soft rustle of movement, the faint crackle of burning. The air is thick enough to taste. You inhale it without thinking, filling your lungs with the same mixture you exhale. It circulates endlessly. Men breathing each other's heat, each other's smoke, each other's lives. Outside, the wind picks up, carrying away the smoke from the vents, scattering it through the ruins. It blends with the rest of the city's breath. Diesel, fire, death, snow. From a distance, you wouldn't be able to tell one scent from another. It all becomes Stalingrad. You lie down on your side, the dirt cold against your face. The smell of mud and men surround you, dense, heavy, unchanging. You close your eyes, breathed in slowly. It's awful, it's real, it's life. You've learned not to hate it. It's the one thing that never leaves, the only proof that something living still moves beneath all the smoke and ruin. When you drift towards sleep, the fire fades again. The air cools, thickens. You pull the blanket higher, and it releases another wave of that scent. Earth, sweat, smoke, fuel, breath. You inhale deeply, let it fill your chest, and sink into the dark. And somewhere above you, the city exhales the same mixture through 1,000 broken roofs, the smell of men and mud and burnt fuel rising into the cold night, merging into one endless breath that never really stops. There's no such thing as privacy anymore. The war stripped that word from the language of the living a long time ago. Down here, in the dugouts, you exist shoulder to shoulder with whoever fits inside. Rank, age, story, name, it all blurs together. There's no room for distinctions when the walls press in on you, when the air is a shared breath. You don't choose who sleeps beside you. You just wake up one day, and they're there, moving in rhythm with your breathing, part of the same small ecosystem of survival. The space is barely wide enough for 4 men to lie down, but 6 do anyway. 1 against each wall, 2 near the entrance, 2 beside the fire. The ceiling is low enough that you can feel your own breath bouncing back against your face. When someone moves, everyone moves. When someone coughs, everyone feels the air shift. The ground beneath you is cold and uneven, the blankets damp, the walls slick with condensation. There's no comfort here, only habit. The first days with strangers are quiet. No one speaks unless necessary. You share the fire, share the smoke, share the smell. The silence is heavy but not hostile, and it's simply the only thing left to give each other. Conversation takes energy, and energy is rationed like food. You learn to communicate in glances, in gestures, in the subtle shuffle of a body making space for another. At night, the sound of breathing fills the dugout, dozens of rhythms overlapping, the deep, steady inhale of a man in deep sleep, the sharp cough of another fighting an infection, the faint whistle of someone's nose where frost has split the skin. It becomes kind of music, uneven but continuous. You fall asleep to it, and when you wake, it's still there. The rats come early. You hear them before you see them. The faint scratching at the walls, the tiny thud of paws against frozen dirt. They're bold here, unafraid of men. They move between shelters through narrow tunnels, as if they built their own city beneath yours. You hear them at night, rustling through the scraps of food, chewing through whatever can be chewed. At first, the sound makes you flinch. Later, you stop noticing. It's just another sound in the orchestra of living underground. One night, one runs across your leg while you sleep. You jerk awake, the motion shaking everyone around you. The man beside you opens one eye, mutters something without meaning it, and rolls over. You sit there for a moment, heart pounding, then lie back down. The warmth of the others presses against you. Within minutes, you've stopped caring. The rat lives here too. The walls are alive with him. You hear them moving behind the dirt, their claws scratching faint patterns just out of reach. Sometimes they emerge from cracks, blinking against the light of the fire. They look healthy, plump even, their fur slick and grey. They don't fear men anymore. You toss a pebble, and they scatter for a few seconds before returning. One of the soldiers says that killing them is bad luck. Another says they're the only creatures here thriving. No one argues. The food you keep is always at risk. Whatever bread you have, whatever scraps of dried meat, they'll find them if you're not careful. You start hanging what little you have in a tin can, suspended from the roof with wire. It doesn't matter. They still get to it sometimes. You hear the soft clatter in the dark, the squeal of a fight, then silence. In the morning, what's left is chewed beyond use. You scrape the remnants into the fire, watch them blacken, and move on. You start to recognise the faces of the men you live with. Not their names, those don't matter, but their eyes, their movements, their smells. You can tell who's waking by the sound of a sigh, who's dreaming by the twitch of a hand. One of them snores loud enough to shake dust from the roof. Another mumbles in his sleep, words too quiet to catch. You don't ask what he dreams of. Dreams aren't private here either. Sometimes, during the quiet hours between watches, you find yourself listening to the heartbeat of the dugout, the small sounds that fill the silence, someone shifting, someone coughing, the faint patter of dirt falling from the ceiling. The rat's claws blend into it, rhythmic, steady. It's strange how comforting it becomes. Life is loud even when it's buried. The firelight paints everyone the same colour. Orange skin, black shadows, tired eyes. You watch the man across from you trimming the edge of his boot with a knife. His hand shakes slightly. The blade catches the light with each motion. Another man is rubbing his chest where the cold has made breathing painful. No one speaks. The only sound is the fire, a slow, constant crackle that measures time better than any clock could. Occasionally, new faces appear. Soldiers moved from another section, replacement for those who didn't wake up one morning. They crawl in quietly, carrying their smell of smoke and snow. You make room automatically, shifting your legs, giving up a corner of the blanket. No introductions are needed. The shared silence is enough. Every so often, someone dies in their sleep. It happens quietly, almost politely. In the morning, when the others stir, the body is cold, stiff. The men look at it for a while, not speaking. Then someone checks the pockets for anything useful, removes the boots if they're dry, and carries the rest outside. No ceremony, just necessity. The hole in the ground gets a little more crowded that night. Someone else filling the empty space. The rats are the only ones who seem to notice everything. They follow the bodies out, wait, then return. You hear them gnawing softly somewhere in the distance, their world continuing as yours shrinks. One evening, as you sit near the entrance, you watch a rat crawl toward the fire. It stops just close enough to feel the warmth, whiskers twitching. The men watch it in silence. It looks at you, eyes bright, black beads catching the light. Then it scurries away into a crack in the wall. The space it leaves behind feels strange, emptier than before. You think about how there's no difference anymore between man and animal down here. You all eat the same scraps, breathe the same smoke, sleep in the same dirt. The only thing that separates you is fire, and even that belongs to whoever keeps it burning. As the night deepens, the temperature drops again. You lie shoulder to shoulder with the others, each of you wrapped in layers of fabric and exhaustion. The smell of sweat and smoke fills the air. Someone sighs, someone shifts. The walls creak, a rat scurries near your head. You don't move. You've stopped fighting the small intrusions of life. The warmth shared between bodies becomes its own kind of fire. You can feel it, faint but steady, radiating through the layers of clothing and blankets. It's the only heat you can count on. You breathe slowly, syncing your rhythm with the men around you. The sound of breathing fills the space again, the same as every night. Outside, the wind rises, carrying snow against the entrance flap. The fire flickers low, sending shadows across the faces beside you. The rats retreat deeper into the walls. The men murmur softly, half asleep. The earth holds steady. You close your eyes, listening to the living and the almost living sharing the same hollow in the ground. There's no loneliness here anymore. Just bodies, dirt, smoke, and the quiet understanding that everyone, man and rat alike, is only here because they've found a hole deep enough to hide in. The fire crackles once, then steadies. The air grows thick again. You breathe in, exhale, and feel the shared warmth drift across your face like a faint current. You drift towards sleep. One heartbeat among many. One breath among dozens. One quiet life among the moving shadows of the underground city. There's a kind of silence in Stalingrad that isn't really silence. It's a texture, a weight, a constant hum under everything. The war never truly stops, but it pauses sometimes, between barrages, between gusts of wind, and in those pauses you can hear the winter itself. The two sounds merge until you can't tell which belongs to nature and which belongs to men. It's the city's music now, the only rhythm left. Wind through the ruins, explosions through the night, the voice of the living and the dead speaking together in the cold. You wake to it before you see anything. The air is thick and cold enough to hold sound like water. You can feel it more than hear it. The dull rumble of distant artillery, the faint moan of the wind scraping across broken buildings. The two overlap perfectly, one feeding into the other, until the world above the dugout sounds like it's breathing in pain. The walls around you vibrate gently. Dust falls in small clouds from the roof, glinting faintly in the weak light of the dying fire. Each vibration rolls through your chest, a heartbeat that doesn't belong to you. You sit still, waiting to see if it will stop, but it never does. The sound is constant, a background pulse. You crawl out into the night because you need to see it, to remind yourself that the world still exists beyond the dirt. The air outside burns as you breathe it. The wind is steady, cold enough to slice open your lungs. You pull your scarf higher, but it doesn't help. The night sky is grey, no stars, just the faint glow of distant fires painting the horizon orange. The sound of artillery comes from everywhere and nowhere. You see the flashes before you hear the thunder. Small bursts of light far away, swallowed by smoke. Then seconds later, the boom rolls in, slow and heavy, followed by the brittle clatter of debris falling somewhere nearby. You can feel the vibrations under your boots. It's not frightening anymore. It's ordinary. The wind weaves through the ruins, catching on the edges of broken metal, on the corners of collapsed walls. It makes a low, moaning sound, kind that rises and falls without warning. Sometimes it sounds like voices. Sometimes it sounds like music. It changes pitch as it moves. 1,000 invisible hands dragging their fingers across the frozen remains of the city. You stand still, listening. The artillery in the distance grows rhythmic, like a drumbeat buried beneath snow. Between each blast, the wind answers. The two call back and forth across the city, a slow, terrible conversation that's been going on for months. The snow muffles everything it touches. Each new layer softens the sharpness of sound, but it doesn't stop it. You can hear it moving across the streets, hissing softly against debris, sliding off roofs in slow sheets. When it hits metal, it makes a hollow ringing, faint but distinct. You start to recognize each noise, each tone. The city is an orchestra of cold and destruction, playing endlessly without conductor or pause. Somewhere behind you, another shell lands close enough that you can feel it in your stomach. The blast lights up the horizon for a second, turning the snow pink. The echo rolls over you like a wave. The wind takes it, carries it, twists it into something softer. The earth trembles, then stills. The only thing left is the whisper of ice falling from the roofs. You walk through the ruins slowly. The ground crunches beneath your boots, the sound dry and brittle. The air hums faintly, a constant undertone of frozen wind moving through empty windows. You pass a street where the facades of buildings stand like paper cutouts, their interiors exposed to the night. Each room catches the wind differently, producing its own note. Together they sound like a choir of ghosts. When the artillery pauses, the world doesn't go quiet. The wind fills the gap immediately, a low roar that wraps around every surface. You tilt your head and hear it moving through cracks, through pipes, through holes in the ground. It's alive in a way nothing else here is. You realise that the wind and the war have the same voice, restless, endless, uncaring. Back in the dugout, the sound changes again. The earth dampens it, but doesn't erase it. You hear the explosions as a deep hum through the walls, the wind as a sigh through the vents. The roof creaks with each gust, and the fire pops weakly in response, like a small heartbeat trying to compete with the world above. The men inside don't speak. There's nothing to say over this music. Everyone listens without realising it, their heads tilted slightly, their breathing in sync with the rhythm outside. Sometimes the sound changes tone, sharper, closer. That's when the ground trembles, and everyone looks up instinctively. The dirt sifts down from the ceiling. Snow filters through cracks, and for a second the air smells of powder and frost mixed together. Then it passes, and the silence returns, heavier than before. You lie back, staring at the ceiling, eyes half closed. The wind howls above, the earth hums below, and somewhere in between you exist. One thin layer of warmth in a city made entirely of cold. You can't tell how long the noises have been there anymore. They've become part of you, a second pulse that matches your heartbeat. At times, you think you hear voices in the wind. Not real ones, not words, just shapes of sound that feel familiar. The memory of someone calling a name, a laugh, the sound of something that used to mean home. The mind does that here, fills the noise with ghosts. You stop trusting your ears after a while. You stop needing to. The artillery begins again, this time closer. The blasts come faster, louder, each one cutting through the wind with precision. The dugout shakes, the fire flickers, the air fills with dust. The men sit still, heads low, waiting. The ground shifts slightly, then settles. You all breathe again. You wait for the next one. It doesn't come. The wind takes over once more, wrapping the silence like a blanket. When you finally crawl outside again, the snow glows faintly with reflected firelight. Smoke rises in the distance, black lines against the horizon. The cold air carries the smell of fuel and metal. The sound is softer now, but it never truly stops. You stand there for a while, listening to the city breathing around you. Each gust of wind, each distant blast, each small sound from beneath your feet, they blend into something that feels endless, ancient. It's not just war anymore. It's the sound of the world forgetting what peace ever was. You turn back toward the shelter, the noise following you like a shadow. Inside, the fire is low, the air thick. You sit near it, close your eyes, and hear the wind pressing against the walls, the muffled roar of artillery buried under the earth. The two sounds merge again, circling each other, never stopping. You breathe in time with them. The fire cracks softly, the roof sighs, the city hums, the war and the winter play on together. One voice made of steel and snow, filling the dark until you can't tell which one is keeping you awake and which one is singing you to sleep. You stop being hungry at some point. The feeling doesn't disappear, It changes shape. It becomes a dull ache that lives in your chest instead of your stomach. A slow emptiness that never leaves. You still eat, but not to satisfy anything. Only to keep the body moving. To keep the blood from freezing. Food stops being a thing you look forward to. It becomes a number, a habit, a task. Something to survive through rather than enjoy. The official rations come irregularly now, if at all. You line up for them in the cold, standing motionless with the others, your breath freezing in the air. The wind slides through the line like another body, touching everyone in turn. The tint bowl in your hand feels like part of your skin. When you finally reach the front, what you receive doesn't resemble food. A few spoonfuls of something grey, thick, tasteless. They call it porridge, but it's made from whatever can be boiled down. Crushed grains, flour dust, potato skins, sometimes ground up seeds or bark. You swallow it without chewing, the heat barely reaching your throat before it's gone. When there's no official food, you search. Everyone does. You dig through the ruins for anything that once belonged in a kitchen. Jars of pickles shattered into frozen glass. Bags of flour mixed with dirt and ash. Tin cans that have lost their labels, their contents frozen solid and unidentifiable. You hit them with the butt of a knife until they crack open. Inside might be meat or beans or just air and rust. You eat it anyway. You can't afford to be wrong about food anymore. In the early weeks, people trade. A slice of bread for a cigarette. A lump of sugar for a glove. Later, there's nothing left to trade. The bread that remains isn't bread anymore. It's made from whatever can be ground fine enough to bake. Sawdust, grass, straw, even bits of paper. The colour turns darker each week, until it's closer to earth than grain. It crumbles when you touch it, sticks to your teeth when you bite. You chew slowly, forcing it down with water melted from snow. The taste is nothing, and the nothingness becomes familiar. When the factories stopped running, the horses died next. At first, they were buried in the snow. Later, they became meat. Frozen carcasses pulled from the streets, scraped clean with knives, boiled until the water turned grey. It didn't matter how old the meat was, or if it was frozen stiff, or if flies had touched it months ago. It was meat. It was life. You could smell it cooking from a long distance. Faint, greasy, heavy. Men followed that smell like it was a compass. You remember the first time you tasted it? It was sweet, almost like something real. You didn't care where it came from. You chewed until your jaw ached, swallowed, and felt the heat spread through your stomach. It was the first time in weeks you'd felt full, even for an hour. After the horses were gone, people boiled leather. Belts, boots, scraps of harness. They scraped off the dirt, cut the leather into strips, soaked it overnight, then boiled it until it softened. The water turned brown, thick, smelling of glue. You chewed it slowly, your teeth sliding against the rubbery texture. It didn't taste like anything, but it filled your mouth, gave your body something to do. The broth that came from it, if you could call it that, was bitter, but it kept you alive. Later still, people turned to flour mixed with sawdust, ground into paste, dried into something hard. You could break your teeth on it if you weren't careful. Some men crushed coal dust into it for colour, thinking it might trick their stomachs into believing it was food. You eat what others eat. You don't ask questions. Sometimes, if you're lucky, a supply drop lands near your position. You see men run for it through shellfire, stumbling across the snow. Most times, they never come back. When they do, they bring whatever they could carry. Frozen bread, tins of fish, sometimes condensed milk. You eat directly from the can, the metal freezing your lips, the fat sticking to your fingers. For a few moments, you remember taste. Then it's gone again. You share everything. When one man finds something, it belongs to all of you. You cut it into equal pieces, no matter how small. Even a crust of bread becomes a ceremony. You hold it gently, break it carefully, watch as each piece disappears into someone's hands. You eat slowly, eyes closed, trying to stretch the moment into something that feels like a meal. The smell of food, any food, draws people. When someone manages to cook, even the faintest aroma fills the dugout with silence. You can hear everyone breathing differently, their attention focused on the fire, on the pot, on the promise of warmth. The steam rises slowly, curling through the air. It smells faintly of grain, or meat, or just hot water and ash. You don't care. You watch it like a prayer. When food runs out completely, you eat snow to fill your stomach. You press it into your mouth until your lips crack, the cold biting deeper with each swallow. It doesn't satisfy hunger, but it keeps you from thinking about it for a few minutes. The snow tastes of smoke and metal, like everything else here. You've heard stories of worse things. Rats cooked over fires, dogs butchered, glue scraped from walls. But you don't ask if they're true. You don't need to. The hunger makes anything believable. The men who whisper those stories do it quietly, their eyes fixed on the ground. You never know if they're confessing or warning you. The officers still write reports, noting rations, recording who gets what. Numbers on paper that don't match what you see. You stop reading them. You stop caring about fairness. The body doesn't know what's fair. It only knows empty and not empty. When you hold a piece of bread now, even a crumb, it feels sacred. You handle it carefully, as if it might disappear. You eat slowly, tasting every grain, every trace of salt. You chew with your eyes closed, letting your tongue memorize the texture. It's not just food, it's proof that you still exist. The men around you grow thinner each day. Their faces sharpen, their eyes sink. The lines between hunger and sickness blur. Some lose the will to eat entirely, their bodies shutting down. You watch them fade quietly, too tired to grieve. You take their share when it's offered, and you keep going. That's how it works now. The smell of cooking, when it happens, becomes unbearable and beautiful. It fills the air, cuts through the damp and the smoke, reaches deep into your brain. It wakes something old, something that remembers comfort. You can't stop smelling it even after it's gone. It clings to your clothes, to your hair, to your dreams. At night, the fire burns low, and the air smells faintly of boiled earth and ash. You lie back, your stomach hollow, your mind slow. The rats move near the walls, gnawing softly, their small bodies living better than yours. You close your eyes and imagine food, but not what you miss. Just something warm, something that doesn't fight the cold when you swallow it. You drift into half sleep, the kind that feels like sinking into water. The last thing you taste is smoke in the back of your throat. You think about bread, about soup, about nothing at all. About the hunger is always there, but it's quiet now, the way all pain becomes quiet when it lasts long enough. And above you, in the frozen city, the wind moves through the ruins, carrying the faint smell of smoke from 100 small fires. The scent of hunger, shared by everyone, rising together into the dark sky and fading into the snow. Morning doesn't arrive in Stalingrad. it just becomes less dark. You wake not because you've rested, but because the cold has pushed you out of whatever shallow sleep you managed to find. The first breath burns. The air inside the dugout hangs thick and frozen. It scrapes the back of your throat like sand. You roll onto your side and your blanket cracks where moisture froze overnight. The man beside you moves slightly, eyes still closed, a faint line of frost running along his scarf. For a few seconds you just lie there, still, waiting for your body to decide whether it wants to move. The ritual begins the same way every day. Before food, before anything, you check the fire. If there's a glow left, just a tiny coal hiding beneath the ash, you breathe on it. Slowly at first, then harder, until it stirs, catches, and offers a whisper of light. If it's gone out completely, you start over from nothing. You gather the scraps you saved from the day before, wood shavings, pieces of cloth, a fragment of paper from a burned book. You strike the match carefully. The flame is a small miracle. Everyone in the dugout watches it, eyes half open, as if seeing life for the first time again. When the fire catches, the sound changes. The small crackle fills the silence, and the cold begins its retreat. Not defeated, but delayed. You hold your hands out to the heat. The skin stings, then numbs again. It's always the same cycle: burn, thaw, freeze, repeat. You rub your hands together until the blood returns. The pain is sharp enough to make you gasp, but it's proof that your fingers still belong to you. The men take turns sitting near the fire. You can't all crowd it at once. There isn't enough space or heat to share that freely. When it's your turn, you lean forward, close enough that the smoke gets into your eyes, blinking through the sting. You don't mind. Tears mean moisture, and moisture means your body still has something left to give. Next comes movement. You crawl outside because you have to, not because you want to. The world above is the same colour as ash, the snow packed hard, the air too dry to hold scent. You stamp your feet, swing your arms, force your body to move in ways that remind it of warmth. You see others doing the same, men walking in small circles, clapping their hands, hitting their chests to keep their hearts from slowing. It looks absurd, but it's the only reason any of you are still alive. Breathing hurts, the air cuts the inside of your nose. Frost forms on your eyelashes, blurring the edges of the ruins. You look around, the city shifting in shades of grey. Smoke curls from the vents of other shelters, thin trails marking where life still exists. Each one feels fragile, temporary. You move toward the nearest one, exchanging nods with the men outside. No words are needed. Everyone's busy with their own fight against the cold. Back inside, the air feels heavier now, but warmer. The fire grows slowly, fed with whatever fuel you've managed to find. A broken chair leg, a page from a ruined notebook, bits of wood stripped from window frames. You never burn too much at once. Firewood is currency, worth more than bread. You ration it piece by piece, like a prayer measured in splinters. The smoke has nowhere to go, so it collects under the roof, coating everything with a black sheen. Your clothes are stiff with soot. Your hands are stained grey. You can taste the smoke in every breath, but it's better than the alternative. You've learned that every scent of burning means another hour of warmth. Keeping warm isn't about comfort, it's about function. Fingers need to move to clean a rifle, to tie a knot, to hold a spoon. Feet need to stay alive to walk to the next shelter. Every few hours, you check your toes, press them through your boots, make sure they still respond. When they don't, you rub them, slap them, curse at them until they sting again. You know men who didn't, and you know what came next. By midday, the light changes again. Not brighter, just thinner. The cold shifts too, settling deeper, quieter, heavier. You add more fuel, keeping the fire small but constant. Someone melts snow in a pot, the water turning cloudy and grey. You drink it while it's still hot, feeling it move through your chest like a slow river. It's the closest thing to warmth you'll know all day. The dugout smells of smoke, sweat, and damp soil. The air feels alive, pulsing faintly with the heat from the fire and the movement of bodies. You listen to the rhythm of breathing around you. Slow, steady, mechanical. Every man in the room performing the same unconscious act of staying alive. The cold is patient. It waits for you to stop moving, to forget for a moment. You never let it. You take turns tending the fire through the day. It becomes a kind of clock. Every few hours someone pokes the embers, adds another scrap, stirs the ashes to keep the glow alive. The sound of wood breaking is a reminder of time passing. Without it, the hours would blur completely. Sometimes you step outside again, not because you need to, but because you can't stay underground too long. The cold above is brutal, but the stillness below starts to feel like drowning. Outside, the wind greets you immediately, sharp and absolute. You look up at the sky. It's always the same, white pressed against grey, no horizon, no sun. You breathe once, twice, feel the air tear through your throat, then return inside before your body can start to shake. Evening arrives without ceremony. The light fades slightly, the shadows inside the dugout lengthen. You feed the fire again, knowing that once it goes out, you'll have to start from scratch. The men settle into their spots, wrapping themselves in blankets, coats, whatever layers they have left. The sound of the wind becomes the only thing from outside that reaches you. It moves over the roof, like a hand searching for cracks. Sometimes it finds one, slips in, and strokes your face with cold fingers. You turn away, pretend not to notice. Before sleep, there's one final ritual. You check your hands again, your feet, your face. You rub them until they ache. You make sure the fire still glows. You tuck your coat tighter, pull your scarf over your mouth, and breathe through the fabric to warm the air before it reaches your lungs. The smoke has filled the dugout by now, a low haze that blurs the walls. It stings your eyes, but it keeps the air warm. The last sound you hear before sleep is the slow crackle of the fire. The last thing you feel is the weight of the cold pressing against the walls, testing the edges, waiting for the flame to die. You curl into yourself, one hand near your chest where it's warmest, your breath steady, shallow. Somewhere in the dark, a piece of wood splits, and the spark that escapes feels like a heartbeat. You open your eyes briefly, see the glow reflect on the dirt ceiling, then close them again. You don't think of tomorrow, or next week, or anything beyond this night. The ritual never ends, it only resets. Wake, breathe, move, burn, sleep, repeat. Every day the same small defiance against the cold that eats everything it touches. And above you, the city breathes frost into the night, its broken buildings wrapped in snow, its air filled with the low sound of fire smoke drifting upward. Tiny, fragile signs that life still exists beneath the ice. The letters arrive sometimes, not often enough to believe in them, not rare enough to stop waiting for them. They come in bursts, like snow, scattered, directionless, carried by whoever is still alive enough to move between the ruins. A handful at a time, creased and frozen, edges smudged by soot, folded into the pockets of messengers who vanish before anyone learns their names. You hear about them before you see them. A murmur moves through the dugouts, low and uncertain. Someone near headquarters has mail. Maybe from Moscow, maybe from the other side of the river, maybe just a rumour. But even a rumour warms the air a little. The thought of words written somewhere else, somewhere not buried under snow and fire, feels like heat you can't touch, but can still imagine. When they finally come, they look like nothing. Thin sheets of paper, grey with fingerprints, stiff from frost. The ink bleeds in places, the handwriting small and cramped. You unfold them slowly, careful not to tear the creases. The act feels fragile, almost sacred. You run your fingers over the letters, tracing the grooves where the pen pressed hardest. It feels like contact, like the faint echo of a human hand through time and distance. The words are simple, they always are. We are alive. The harvest was small, the child has grown. Come home when you can. The sentences have no decoration, no poetry, just facts, but you read them again and again, searching between the lines for something else. Warmth, hope, a reason to believe that the world still has places where the ground isn't frozen, and people still speak softly. Sometimes the letters don't make sense. The dates are wrong, the place is impossible. You read one that mentions a town you know no longer exists. You don't tell the man who received it. He's reading it out loud, smiling at the words as if they're true. You let him have that. Lies are better than silence. For those who never receive letters, there are rumours of them anyway. You imagine what yours would say if it came. You compose it in your head while waiting in line for water, or while sitting near the fire, watching smoke curl through the vent. You picture the handwriting, the paper, the faint smell of another life. You write and read these invisible messages to yourself over and over, until they feel as real as the dirt under your fingers. At night, some men write their own. They crouch near the fire, holding stubs of pencils, their breath fogging over the paper. They write to wives, to mothers, to people who might already be gone. The words look awkward, uneven, rushed. Sometimes they just draw small lines, pretending to write. It's not the message that matters. It's the act of pretending that someone will read it. You see their faces in the glow of the firelight, soft for the first time in weeks. They fold the letters carefully, tuck them into their coats, and never send them. Hope doesn't need to travel far to work. You've written a few yourself, short ones, just names, fragments, memories. You keep them in your pocket until the paper turns soft from being handled too much. Sometimes you unfold one, stare at the blank side, and imagine a reply. We are warm. We are safe. We are waiting for you. You fold it back, tuck it away, and go back to work. The air in the dugout grows heavier as evening comes. The fire burns low, the smoke hangs close to the ceiling. Someone reads a letter aloud, his voice thin and careful. The others listen quietly. For a few minutes, the words pull you all somewhere else, to fields, to kitchens, to rooms with windows and clean air. The sentences are small lights flickering in the dark, just bright enough to remember what warmth feels like. When he finishes, no one speaks. The silence afterward feels fuller than before. Sometimes a letter arrives too late, you've seen that too. A name called in the ration line, a folded envelope handed over, only for the messenger to to hear that the man it was meant for hasn't been seen in days. The paper still gets passed around, read by whoever's left. It doesn't matter anymore who it was written for. The words belong to everyone. In the mornings, you see men checking their pockets before heading out, making sure their letters are still there. Some keep them close to their chest, tied with string or tucked into the lining of their coats. The paper bends with the body's movement, growing soft from sweat and heat. By now, most of the words have blurred into unreadable marks. But it doesn't matter. The paper itself has become the message. The touch of it against your ribs reminds you that you belong to something beyond this hole in the earth. When the days are bad, and most are, you pull the letter out, even if it's just a scrap. You hold it near the fire until it warms, until it stops feeling like ice. You read the same lines again, even if you already know them by heart. The paper glows faintly in the light, thin enough that you can almost see through it. The handwriting becomes a map of motion, proof that a hand moved once across the page, in a world where ink could still flow and fingers didn't shake. Some men start to write for others. You've seen one soldier take down words for another who can't hold a pencil anymore. The injured man dictates slowly, pausing between sentences, searching for something worth saying. The writer nods, patient, his pencil scratching softly against the paper. When they finish, they sit together in silence, staring at the letter that may never leave this place. It doesn't have to. Just writing it makes it real enough. The sound of artillery rolls in the distance again, the same low rhythm that marks every night. You feel the vibration through the floor, the dirt shifting slightly under your feet. The fire flickers, the letters on the paper tremble in your hand. You fold it, slide it back into your pocket, and press it flat with your palm. The warmth of your hand transfers to it. You imagine it carries that warmth forward, through the dirt, through the air, through the endless distance between you and the place you still call home. Hope doesn't live above ground anymore. It lives here, in the small space between bodies, in the air that smells of smoke and damp paper, in the quiet act of writing when there's no one left to read. You realise that hope is not belief, it's repetition. You keep doing the same small things that remind you you're still alive. You write, you fold, you wait. The wind outside shifts, brushing snow against the roof. Someone stirs the fire, the light flaring briefly, washing the walls in orange. You see faces turn toward the glow, eyes tired but awake. You think of all the letters buried in pockets across the city, all the words sealed in dirt and smoke. None of them will ever reach where they were meant to go. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that they exist. You lie back, the ground cold beneath you, your hands still smelling faintly of smoke and ink. You breathe slowly, watching the roof shiver as another distant blast rolls through the night. You imagine the sound carrying those unseen letters outward, scattering them across the frozen city like snow. Somewhere, far beyond this place, maybe someone looks up and thinks for a moment of you, without knowing why. Maybe that's all hope really is. A message that never arrives, but still keeps travelling. You close your eyes. Let that thought stay with you, and listen to the quiet breathing of the men around you. The letters rest in pockets and coats, silent and unread, but alive. And the fire burns one more hour, turning smoke into warmth, keeping the earth around you from turning to ice, while another night of waiting begins. The men who stay alive longest aren't the strongest. They're the ones who can make something out of nothing. Every soldier here becomes an engineer eventually, not because he was trained to be, but because the cold forces it. Desperation is the only instructor left in Stalingrad. It teaches quickly, it punishes mistakes without warning, and it never allows failure twice. You start small, fixing a crack in the roof with frozen mud, shaping it by hand until it fits like stone, patching a hole in your coat with wire, turning a spent shell casing into a stovepipe. Every action begins with a problem. Too cold, too wet, too little air, too little light. Then you build. The tools are whatever you can find. A rock, a knife, a nail bent straight again. The plans exist only in your head, drawn by instinct. There's no blueprint for survival here. There's only the moment when you look at a piece of junk and realise it can become something else. That's the closest thing this place has to genius. The city provides the raw materials. Steel twisted by explosions. Wood splintered and blackened by fire. Bricks, glass, rags, bones. Everything has already been destroyed once, which makes it easier to shape again. You find a section of pipe near a burned out factory, half buried in snow. You pull it free, wipe the soot away, and realise it fits perfectly into the vent of your dugout. You carry it back like a treasure, careful not to drop it. One more piece of order carved out of chaos. Inside, the others are working on their own projects. One is carving a handle for his shovel using a piece of chair leg. Another is cutting tin from a can to make a spoon. Someone else has found a broken lantern and is trying to turn it into a stove. The air fills with the sounds of quiet labour, metal scraping against stone, cloth tearing, the soft tap of makeshift hammers. It's not industry. It's survival disguised as craft. You learn to value materials differently. Nails become currency. Rope is sacred. A sheet of glass, if you find one unbroken, feels like a miracle. It can become a window for the dugout, or a surface for light to reflect against. Even melted ice from a pot is saved. Every drop is precious. Nothing here is waste, because waste is a word that belonged to another world. One man, a mechanic before the war, builds a heater from the parts of a wrecked truck. He uses the exhaust pipe as a chimney, the engine plate as a reflector, the fuel soaked in rags. When it works, the heat it gives off is faint but constant. You gather around it, feeling warmth spread evenly through the dugout for the first time. The men stare at it as though it's alive. The mechanic sits beside it, silent, eyes half closed. He doesn't smile. He just watches the flame move, expressionless, like a doctor listening to a heartbeat. Another man makes candles from animal fat and string. The fat smells terrible when it burns, thick and greasy, but it gives light. The smoke hangs low, oily and dark, coating everything in a fine film. You don't care. Light means safety. Light means you can see the edges of the room, and the faces of the living. You find yourself becoming more inventive each day. Hunger and cold strip away hesitation. You cut strips of metal to make hooks, twist wire into latches, use broken glass as blades. Every object you handle carries a memory of its old life. The handle of a pot might have come from a school. The wood in your fire might have been someone's door. You stop thinking about what things used to be. The city itself is your supply depot now. Its bones reassembled piece by piece into something that can shelter you. Sometimes the improvisation turns dangerous. You see a man trying to light a stove with fuel siphoned from an abandoned vehicle. The flame catches too quickly, flashes up, and burns the hair from his hands. He screams once, then laughs, shaking his fingers as if to prove he can still move them. The laughter doesn't last long. The smell of burnt skin lingers for hours. But the stove works. The ingenuity spreads. One dugout figures out how to draw air through a trench, keeping smoke low and hidden. Another builds a sleeping shelf from planks suspended with wire to stay off the frozen ground. Someone discovers that if you dig a tunnel between two shelters, you can share warmth without leaving the ground. Slowly, an invisible network grows beneath the city. Ducts, vents, passages. The earth itself becomes a machine for staying alive. You take part in it without thinking. Every time you dig, shape, tie, or burn something, you're adding to the city's anatomy. You begin to sense the patterns, the way heat moves, the way sound carries, the way air shifts through the smallest cracks. You stop building shelters and start building systems, not because you want to, but because the cold demands it. One evening, a soldier crawls in holding a piece of metal shaped like a fan. He's taken it from a destroyed aircraft, blades bent but still sharp. He mounts it above the fire vent so that rising smoke spins it slowly. The turning blades push the warm air around the dugout. You sit watching it move, hypnotized. The flicker of the blades catches the firelight, scattering reflections across the dirt walls. It looks like motion itself has decided to stay. You start calling these creations machines, though they barely function. A pot with holes punched through it becomes a stove. A bent spoon becomes a lockpick. A section of barrel becomes a chair. Each invention feels like an act of defiance. You're not just surviving, you're rebuilding, molecule by molecule, the idea of control. Outside, the sound of artillery rolls over the city again. The roof shivers, the new chimney rattles. You brace your hand against the wall until the vibration passes. When it does, you exhale, and the dugout exhales with you. The air moving softly through the vents you carved, the fire flaring and settling. Everything holds. The things you've built are fragile, but they're yours. You think about the word engineer, how it used to mean someone who built bridges or machines, things meant to last. Here, it means something else. It means finding a way through the moment. It means outsmarting the cold for another day. It means shaping the dirt around you into a thing that doesn't kill you. The tools have changed. The purpose hasn't. In the corner, a man is repairing his boots with wire and a needle made from a nail. The thread is coarse, uneven, but it holds. Another man is boiling snow in a helmet, using the lid of a can as a stand. The fire burns low, smoke drifting in slow circles. You watch the small movements, the hands, the gestures, the rhythm of improvisation, and you realise that everyone here has become a builder of something. Not houses, not cities, but moments. Each one designed to keep death a few minutes further away. The mechanic's heater hums faintly. The fan above the vent turns. The water in the helmet steams. The dugout smells of smoke, oil, and wet earth. The inventions of desperation filled a space with their own kind of warmth, a heat made not from fire, but from persistence. Later, when you crawl into your place against the wall, you can still hear the faint metallic creaks of the machines at work. The rhythm is uneven, but steady. You close your eyes, the sound blending with your heartbeat, with the wind, with the distant thunder of artillery. Everything working, everything barely holding, everything alive. You fall asleep, surrounded by the quiet industry of the forgotten. The small, endless labour of men who turn despair into engineering, dirt into shelter, fire into breath. And somewhere above, the city continues to burn, unaware that beneath its frozen skin, 1,000 minds are still inventing ways to resist it. No one planned it. It just grew. Like frost spreading through cracks, like roots moving through stone. The hidden city beneath Stalingrad wasn't built in a day, or by any design. It appeared because it had to. Every man digging to escape the cold, every shelter built to last one more night, every tunnel carved to reach another group of survivors. All of it added up to something larger than anyone could see from inside. If you stood above ground and listened long enough, you might have heard it. A faint hum beneath the wind, the sound of life still moving under the ice. But up there, everything was broken. The real city, the one still breathing, was underneath. It began as individual holes in the ground. Then they connected. First by accident, 2 shelters dug too close, the walls collapsing into one another. Then by intent, a tunnel dug to share warmth, a passage carved to trade firewood or rations, a secret path for carrying the wounded when the shelling above made daylight impossible. Each new tunnel extended the network. Each new hand that dug added to the map no one had drawn. The earth was dense, cold, uncooperative. Every inch took hours to move. The shovels were dull, the soil frozen like rock. You dug with whatever you had. Helmets, tin cups, bare hands when tools broke. The deeper you went, the wetter it became. Moisture seeped through, freezing in thin sheets along the walls. The light from your lantern or fire bounced off it, making the dirt shimmer faintly like metal. You learned the texture of the ground, the way a sailor learns the sea. You knew when the soil was too loose, when it might collapse. You knew when the ceiling was thin enough for the cold wind to whisper through it. The earth groaned and shifted constantly, alive with movement. But you kept digging. Soon the paths began to branch. One tunnel led to another, then another. Some went downward, others sideways. Some ended abruptly in collapsed sections. Others opened into rooms already occupied. You never knew what you'd find when you broke through a wall. Sometimes it was another group of men, startled faces staring back at you through the dust. Sometimes it was nothing, just empty air and silence. The first time it happened, you heard the voices before you saw them. The sound was faint, carried through the soil, like whispers underwater. You dug faster, the dirt falling away in clumps, until a hole appeared and a light from another fire spilled through. You saw hands reaching out from the other side. There was laughter, quiet but real. 2 dugouts becoming one. 2 groups realizing they weren't alone. After that, everyone started digging sideways. It became the unspoken project of the city. You weren't just surviving now. You were connecting. Tunnels linked everything. They were narrow, sometimes no wider than your shoulders, supported by beams scavenged from wrecked buildings. The air inside was damp, heavy, filled with the smell of soil and smoke. You crawled through them on your hands and knees, your breath condensing on the walls, your fingers scraping frost. You could travel half a block underground without ever seeing the sky. Along the tunnels, signs appeared. Not real signs, just marks scratched into the dirt or drawn with charcoal. Arrows, numbers, words like food, safe, collapse. The language was simple but understood by everyone. The underground city had its own geography, its own directions. Above ground, Stalingrad was chaos. Below, it was organised by instinct. At night, when the shelling started, the tunnels came alive. Men moved silently through them, carrying supplies, messages, pieces of wood for the fires. The air filled with the sound of crawling, of breathing, of quiet urgency. The earth shuddered with each explosion, dust raining from the ceilings. You pressed yourself against the walls, waited, then kept going. The tunnels flexed like lungs, inhaling smoke and exhaling steam. Some of the larger shelters became gathering points. There was one near the edge of the factory ruins, a long, wide space with a low ceiling and a dozen fires burning in tin cans. People came there to warm themselves, to talk, to listen. News travelled faster underground than it ever did above. Stories passed from mouth to mouth, losing and gaining details with each retelling. Someone would mention a supply drop near the river, or a lost medic found alive in a cellar. None of it was certain, but the stories themselves mattered more than the truth. They were proof that something still existed beyond the dirt. In one section, the tunnels ran so deep that the air felt different. Still, cold, but cleaner. Someone had built a chimney that reached the surface, disguised by rubble. Another group had made shelves from bricks, storing bits of bread, paper, metal. It looked almost domestic, almost like a home. You could sit there and forget for a moment that there was a war raging above your head. When you listened carefully, you could hear the sounds of the world above filtering down, the distant roar of artillery, the hiss of wind, the faint whistle of falling snow. They reached you muted, softened by layers of earth. The underground city had its own kind of silence, one that made every noise feel intimate. The scrape of a boot, the crackle of fire, the murmur of voices, they were the heartbeat of this buried world. Some dugouts connected to cellars of destroyed buildings. From there, you could climb short ladders up to the surface if you needed to. You'd open a trapdoor and emerge between piles of bricks, the grey light of day washing over you. The air outside felt alien, too wide, too sharp. You'd fill a bag with snow for water, check the sky for aircraft, then slip back down again, closing the world behind you. The city beneath began to mirror the one above in strange ways. There were streets, long corridors where men passed each other without speaking. There were crossroads where tunnels intersected, marked by burned-out lanterns. There were neighbourhoods, clusters of dugouts where people recognised each other's faces. Even a kind of market, if you could call it that. Places where men traded matches, bread, bullets, or bits of wire. Value changed depending on what you needed most that day. Sometimes, when the firelight dimmed and your eyes adjusted to the dark, you could almost imagine what it looked like from above. A living map under the frozen ground, glowing faintly from hundreds of hidden fires. The thought made you smile in a way you hadn't for months. The city wasn't dead. It had just moved underground, shedding its buildings and taking root in the soil. You realised in time that you didn't need the sun anymore. Your world existed here, lit by fire, shaped by hands, held together by breath. The people above were fighting for streets and ruins. The people below were fighting for air and warmth. Both wars were the same, just fought on different levels. One evening, you crawled through a tunnel you'd never used before. The walls were smooth, the dirt packed hard. The air smelled faintly of smoke and bread. Fresh bread, though you knew that was impossible. You reached a small chamber lit by a single candle. Two men sat there quietly, talking. One was carving something into the dirt wall with a piece of metal. When you looked closer, you saw what it was. A map. He had drawn lines for every tunnel, every dugout, every connection they knew about. Circles for the gathering points, crosses for the collapsed sections. The map looked alive, spreading outward like veins. You realised then that what you'd all been building wasn't just shelter. It was a body. The hidden city had shape, structure, purpose. When you crawled back to your own dugout later, you carried the image in your head. The idea that beneath the rubble and the snow, beneath the wreckage of the living city, another world existed. One built not from plans or power, but from need. One held together by dirt, smoke, and stubbornness. That night, lying against the cold wall, you listened to the faint sounds travelling through the tunnels. Someone's laughter carried from far away, the scrape of tools, the soft rush of air. You realised you could feel a whole city breathing around you. Above ground, Stalingrad was a ruin, frozen and silent. Below, it was alive, hidden, beating. And as the fire burned low and your eyes began to close, you understood that the world you lived in now wasn't waiting for spring or peace or rescue. It was already complete in its own way. The hidden city beneath Stalingrad had become its own form of civilization. One made entirely of endurance, built by engineers of dirt and desperation, and kept alive by the warmth of men who refused to disappear. It takes time to understand that the snow is not neutral. It falls softly, quietly, as if it's innocent. It covers everything equally: men, ruins, machines. It hides the ugliness of war under a smooth white skin. From a distance, it almost looks peaceful. But after you've lived in it long enough, you start to see what it really is. The snow is alive. It changes shape, it chooses sides, and it kills. At first, it's only an inconvenience. It slows you down, fills your boots, hides the edges of things you used to recognise. The streets vanish beneath it. The landmarks that once guided you are reduced to vague mounds. You can't tell what's a destroyed wall and what's a drift of powder. The city loses its edges, turns soft, shapeless. But the danger isn't in the way it hides things. It's in what it does to everything it touches. You feel it in your hands when you dig. The top layer looks light, but underneath, it's hard as stone. You chip at it with a shovel, the sound dull and heavy. It sticks to your gloves, melts against the heat of your skin, and then freezes again. Every movement becomes a cycle of thaw and ice. By midday your clothes are wet. By nightfall they're armour, frozen solid, stiff, cracking when you move. The snow steals warmth first, then motion, then life. You see it happen. A man comes in from a patrol, his coat crusted white, his face pale and waxy. He doesn't speak. You help him pull off his boots, and his socks come away stiff, the skin beneath purple and glassy. The fire helps, but not much. Once the snow has taken you, the damage stays. Fingers blacken, toes die quietly. You stop counting how many. But snow does more than freeze you. It shapes the battlefield itself. It changes how you move, how you see, how you fight. It buries the sound of footsteps, muffles everything except the wind. You can hear shells long before they land, the noise distorted by the dense air. Sometimes the explosions come so close that snow cascades through the dugout roof, thick clouds of white dust filling the air like smoke. You cough it out, tasting dirt and ice, half blind for minutes afterward. The snow buries the dead quickly, too quickly. One morning you wake and see the ground smooth and untouched, the shapes beneath hidden. A mound here, a rise there, nothing more. The faces, the names, the evidence, all erased overnight. The snow is efficient that way. It turns the city into a blank slate every morning, and every night it covers it again. It erases history faster than the shells can write it. It's the same inside the tunnels. Moisture seeps through the roof, drips down the walls, and freezes into jagged sheets. You break them off and throw them aside, but they form again. The ceiling becomes a forest of ice. The air grows sharp, painful to breathe. You learn to move carefully, your breath visible in the dark. When you touch the walls, the cold passes through your gloves, through your skin, straight into your bones. Sometimes the snow becomes your ally. You learn to use it as insulation, packing it against the walls of the dugout to keep the warmth in. You learn that a layer of snow can hide the vent from aircraft, that a mound of it can deaden the sound of your fire. You build with it the same way you build with dirt. You shovel it carefully, shape it, harden it with water. The same thing that freezes you can also keep you alive, if you use it correctly. One night, during a bombardment, you realise it can protect you too. The shells hit the snow-packed streets, and instead of shattering, they sink. The explosions still come, but the sound is duller, the force absorbed. The snow eats the shock. You press your face into the dirt, feel the ground tremble, and realise the white blanket above you is saving you. It's not kindness. It's physics. The snow kills and shields with equal ease, but when it decides to move, it becomes something else entirely. The roofs of the dugouts grow heavy. You can feel the weight pressing down from above. At first, it's just a groan, a faint shifting sound. Then it comes all at once, a rush of white and ice crashing through the ceiling. You're buried before you can breathe. It's not the noise that kills you. It's the silence after. You claw upward, fingers numb, lungs burning, the snow pressing against your chest like a hand. You find air again, but the fear stays. You start to hear that creak in your sleep. You begin to see snow not as weather, but as territory. The enemy has tanks and planes. You have the cold. The snow is your camouflage, your shield, your grave. You use it to hide your positions, to muffle your steps, to cover your dead. The line between survival and burial becomes one thin layer of white. The soldiers talk about it sometimes, quietly. How it moves when no one touches it. How it swallows sound. How it glows faintly at night when the sky turns grey-blue. They call it by names that don't sound scientific. Things like the curtain, the quiet, and the white weight. You've seen men stare at it too long, hypnotised by its stillness. In a city where everything screams, the snow is the only thing that listens. During patrols, you learn to watch for its traps. Drifts can hide holes, wells, wire, even bodies. The ground looks smooth, but underneath there's nothing. One wrong step and you vanish into it, swallowed whole. You dig for the man, but the snow resists, sliding back into the hole as fast as you can clear it. It fills space like water. You find him too late, his mouth open, eyes wide, frost already forming on his lashes. Yet you depend on it. You melt it for water, mould it into blocks, even use it to wash when the ice inside the dugout grows unbearable. The act feels absurd. Rubbing frozen water on your face to clean away the dirt of survival. But it helps for a few seconds. It makes you remember you're human. When the temperature drops far below freezing, the snow stops being soft. It becomes sharp, crystalline, made of edges. You feel it cutting at your skin when the wind blows. It gets into your clothes, your food, your lungs. You breathe it in without noticing, your throat icing from the inside out. When you speak, Your words come out as small clouds that vanish instantly. Some nights, the snow glows faintly with the reflection of fires burning far away. The light spreads through it, giving everything a ghostly colour. You lie awake watching the ceiling flicker, imagining the whole city pulsing under the snow, like a frozen heart still trying to beat. You can hear the distant hum of engines, the occasional crack of ice splitting, the muffled collapse of a roof somewhere nearby. Every sound carries differently now, filtered through layers of cold. You start to measure time by it, how fast it falls, how deep it gathers, how long it takes to melt in your pot. The snow becomes your clock, your calendar, your signal of what kind of day it will be. Light snow means the air is warmer. Heavy snow means silence, no planes, no shells, no movement. The perfect weather for survival and for death. By late winter, you stop thinking of it as something outside you. It's in your clothes, your lungs, your blood. You move slower, your breath heavier. The cold and the snow merge into one thing, an invisible pressure that you live under constantly. You start to see it in your dreams, endless white, swallowing everything, erasing footprints faster than you can make them. When you wake, the world looks the same. White above, white below. The only colour left is smoke. You step outside and hear the snow crunch, the sound dry and final. You look around and realise that the city is still there, just quieter now, softer, hidden beneath a layer that both protects and punishes. The snow has won, but it's not victory, it's possession. It owns everything now. The streets, the walls, the breath in your chest. You live inside its silence, inside its pale prison. And yet somehow it keeps you alive, even as it kills. You respect it for that. You learn to bow your head when it falls, to move gently, to let it have its way. Because in Stalingrad, the snow is not weather. It's a weapon. One that doesn't choose sides. It just waits endlessly patient to see who can last longer. You, or the winter itself. There's no clear line between surviving and ending in Stalingrad. The men who lasted until the last shells stopped falling didn't win anything. They just outlived the noise. Survival here didn't mean escape or safety. It meant you kept breathing long enough for the world to change shape around you. The city fell quiet one day, not because the cold lifted or the fighting stopped everywhere, but because exhaustion itself had reached its limit. The guns slowed first. The distant thunder that had always rolled through the ground began to fade, replaced by smaller sounds. Boots on ice, coughing, doors creaking open for the first time in months. The air felt heavier without the explosions, as if silence weighed more than sound ever did. You wake up not to a voice or an order, but to the absence of noise. The kind of quiet that feels wrong. The fire is out. The men around you are motionless, still wrapped in their blankets. You listen, waiting for the familiar rhythm of artillery. Nothing comes. You sit up slowly, your joints stiff from sleep and cold, and realise that even the wind sounds different. When you crawl out of the dugout, the city looks unfamiliar. It's still ruined, still broken, still covered in snow, but it feels empty now. The smoke that used to rise in dark columns is gone. The sky is pale, stretched thin over the horizon. Somewhere in the distance, you hear a single voice shouting something you can't understand. Then it fades, swallowed by the stillness. You walk through the snow toward what used to be the main street. The drifts are high, uneven, hiding whatever lies beneath. The ruins are frozen in place, icicles hanging from the jagged edges of concrete. You pass a tank half buried in white, its metal covered in frost. The cannon points upward, as if in surrender. You see others emerging from the ground, figures wrapped in coats, faces hollow. They move slowly, blinking against the light. You nod when you pass, but no one speaks. Words feel unnecessary now. Everyone is doing the same thing, looking for proof that the world is still there. The smell has changed too. It used to be smoke and oil and decay. Now it's cleaner, sharper. The cold has frozen everything into stillness. Even the air smells empty. You breathe it in and it burns, but it feels pure, almost new. There's no sense of victory. The word doesn't fit this place. You can't win against winter, against hunger, against the kind of silence that replaces memory. You just exist after it, standing among the ruins, unsure what to do with the breathing you still have. Some of the men laugh quietly when they realize it's over. The sound is strange, thin, breaking in the middle like it's out of practice. Others cry without sound. Most just stand there, looking at the sky. You feel something inside you loosen, a tension that's been there so long you forgot it existed. But it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like hollow space. The officers appear eventually, their voices hoarse from disuse. They talk about numbers, orders, prisoners. They tell you to stay ready, to wait for instructions. You nod because that's what's expected, but inside, you know there's nothing left to wait for. The war has moved on without you, and you are what remains. You go back to your dugout out of habit. The air inside is stale, familiar. The walls you built with your hands still stand. The fire pit is filled with ash, the roof lined with frost. You sit on the same plank where you've sat every day for months. It feels smaller now, like the earth itself is tired. You look at the faces of the men who are still here. They're not the same faces you arrived with. Their skin is grey, their eyes sunken, but their movements are careful, deliberate. You realise they've become part of this place. The dugout isn't just shelter anymore. It's identity. You wonder if any of you will know how to exist anywhere else. Food is found again, but it doesn't matter. The hunger is permanent now, built into you. Even when you eat, the feeling doesn't leave. The body remembers too much emptiness. The warmth that returns feels like something borrowed, not earned. The letters that no one ever sent are pulled from pockets, unfolded, read one last time. Some burn them in the fire, others keep them. You don't know why you do what you do. Everything feels ceremonial, but without meaning. Maybe the meaning is gone with the sound of the guns. You step outside again. The snow glows faintly in the weak light. You see footprints leading in all directions. New ones, made by survivors emerging from their holes. They wander through the ruins like ghosts, rediscovering a city that doesn't recognise them. Some start digging again, not to hide, but to find others. They pull bodies from the snow, line them up near the walls. No one speaks while they do it. You watch, help when asked, stop when your hands go numb. The dead look peaceful, as if they've been asleep for years. You envy them for a moment and keep working. At night, fires burn in the open for the first time. The smoke rises straight into the sky without fear. You sit near one, staring into it. The flames look strange without the sound of shells above them. The crackle of burning wood fills the air, steady and small. You realise how loud a fire really is when the world goes quiet. Someone begins to talk about going home. The word home sounds like fiction. You can't picture it. The earth, the snow, the smoke. This is all you know now. Still, you listen. You let the idea settle somewhere deep inside, the same way you used to let warmth settle after a mouthful of hot water. You start to see colours again. The sky turning pink in the morning, the rust on metal, the faint green of cloth showing through the frost. They feel foreign, like seeing something through glass. The war stripped the world down to black and white, and now it's trying to remember how to be real again. The city smells of thawing earth when the sun finally begins to return. You hear water dripping from the roofs, running into cracks. The sound is slow, steady, patient. The snow that killed so many begins to disappear, inch by inch, revealing what it had hidden. The streets emerge, the buildings stand again, half skeleton, half memory. You walk through it one last time, tracing the outlines of what used to be. The tunnels have collapsed in places, the dugouts filled with melting ice. The air is different now. You can hear birds again, faintly, though they sound unsure of themselves. The city above and the one below are merging back together. The hidden world is surfacing. You find your old shelter one morning, the place where you first dug into the earth. The roof has caved in, but the walls still hold. You crouch there, touch the dirt, and feel it cold against your skin. For a long time, you don't move. You just sit and listen. The silence here isn't dangerous anymore. It's just silence. There's no ceremony for leaving, no farewell. You pack what little you have, your coat, your letters, a handful of black bread, and start walking. The snow crunches underfoot, the sound hollow and steady. You pass others moving in the same direction. Their faces turn toward something none of you can see yet. Behind you, the fires burn low. The smoke drifts upward in slow spirals, blending into the pale sky. The city exhales one last time. You don't look back. You don't need to. The ground remembers everything. And as you walk, the cold air biting at your face, you realise that endurance isn't a story or a triumph. It's just the act of continuing until the world stops asking you to. That's how it ended for the ones who endured, not with celebration, but with a simple, quiet proof that they were still capable of walking away. You wake up warm. It's the kind of warmth that doesn't feel earned, the kind that's just there when you open your eyes. Soft, quiet, unremarkable. The blankets are heavy but gentle. The air doesn't sting when you breathe. You don't have to check your hands or your feet to see if they still move. You don't have to listen for wind pressing against the walls. The silence isn't dangerous anymore. It's calm. For a few seconds, your body doesn't understand it. It waits for the cold. It waits for the shock that always comes before consciousness. It expects the ache in your fingers, the dryness in your mouth, the scrape of frozen fabric against your skin. But nothing happens. There's no frost on your breath, no sound of boots shifting beside you, no fire sputtering low, just stillness and heat. You lie there, confused by comfort. It feels wrong at first. Your muscles twitch, searching for the tension that used to hold them together. The warmth feels too deep, too steady. You've forgotten what safety feels like. You realise, slowly, that you've been cold for so long that the absence of cold feels like a dream. You turn your head and see sunlight spilling across the floor. It's golden, not the grey light of a frozen dawn. It reaches the walls without diffusing into fog. Dust floats in it, slow and weightless. You watch it drift, remembering how light used to mean danger. Bombs, planes, exposure. Now it just falls quietly, indifferent and kind. The room smells clean, Not smoke, not sweat, not earth. Just air. You breathe deeply, waiting for the sting, but it doesn't come. The lungs adjust reluctantly, like they don't quite trust it. For years, every breath you took was borrowed from a fire, or filtered through dirt. Breathing freely feels unnatural. You move your hand across the blanket, feeling the texture, soft, smooth, warm. You think of the men who would have given anything for that feeling, the ones who fell asleep shivering and never woke up, the ones who built fires with their last scraps of fuel just to feel a trace of heat on their skin before morning. You can almost see them still, huddled together in the dugouts, the firelight flickering against their faces, the cold creeping through the walls inch by inch. You used to think warmth was a privilege. Then you learned it was a miracle. Something that could only exist for a few moments at a time. Something you had to fight for with everything you had. You built it out of smoke and wood, out of desperation and breath. You carried it in your hands like it was alive, fragile enough to die if you stopped watching it. Now lying here, you realise how easily it returns when the war is gone. The world has simply reset itself. The heat comes from a pipe, not from a fire you tended all night. The room stays warm even when you sleep. You don't have to protect it. You don't have to earn it. You don't even have to think about it. You look around, half expecting the dirt walls, the smoke stains, the ceiling low enough to touch. Instead, there's clean plaster, a ceiling that feels impossibly high, a window that opens without fear. Outside, the air shimmers faintly with sunlight. Somewhere, water drips from a roof, steady and peaceful. The thought hits you slowly. The men you knew never had this. Not once. Not even for a second. Even when they dreamed, their dreams were cold. Every sleep they ever took was a negotiation with frost. Every morning was another battle to move, to breathe, to keep the blood flowing. They built warmth, but they never woke to it. You remember their faces when they slept, the stillness that looked too much like death. You remember the way they curled around the fire, chasing the last traces of heat. You remember how each of you would wake in the dark, your first instinct to reach toward the embers, to see if they were still alive. That was the only kind of morning you knew. You close your eyes and try to picture waking up warm in that world. You can't. It doesn't belong there. The two realities refuse to overlap. The idea of comfort feels like an insult to their memory. But then you realise this is what they were building toward without knowing it. Every piece of wood they burned, every scrap they scavenged, every hour they dug into the earth. It was all a rebellion against cold, against emptiness, against forgetting what warmth felt like. And in some distant, invisible way, their rebellion worked. You're here now, in a room where the air doesn't hurt, where light doesn't mean death, where warmth is ordinary. The city they saved or lost, depending on who you ask, exists again. People walk its streets without listening for bombs. They light fires because they want to, not because they have to. They sleep through the night without fear. You sit up slowly, the blanket slipping from your shoulders. The floor is warm beneath your feet. You press your hand against it, feeling the quiet thrum of heat moving through pipes, through walls, through everything. The sound is faint, but you recognise it. The hum of life continuing. The same sound you once heard in the tunnels, in the dugouts, in the heartbeats of men sleeping beside you in the dark. You stand and walk to the window. Outside, snow is falling lightly, slow and harmless. It covers rooftops, glitters in the morning sun. You open a window, and the air that enters is cold but gentle. It touches your face without cutting. You let it in. The snow has lost its edge. It's no longer a weapon, just weather again. You close your eyes and breathe, remembering the hundreds of mornings that never had this. You think of the men waking to frozen blankets, their hands cracked, their breath hanging in the air like ghosts. You think of how every one of them must have imagined a moment like this, even if only in dreams they couldn't remember after waking. You know they never got it, but you have it now. And maybe that's the point. Maybe warmth is the only inheritance the living can give the dead. The continuation of comfort, the quiet proof that the cold didn't win. You stay by the window for a long time, watching the snow fall and melt against the glass. The room is still warm. The world outside is bright. There's no sound of war, no smoke, no hunger. Just air and light and the steady rhythm of life returning. You realise that waking up warm isn't just a feeling. It's the conclusion of everything they fought against. It's the ending they never reached, but made possible anyway. The final, unspoken victory of endurance. The simple miracle of a morning when no one has to check if the fire is still alive. You step back from the window, sit down, and wrap the blanket around your shoulders again. You close your eyes, the warmth holds, and for the first time it feels okay to let it. If you've made it this far, then you've walked through the same frozen silence those men once did. You felt the weight of the snow pressing down, the sting of smoke in your lungs, the exhaustion of fighting against the cold every hour of every day. You've seen how the simplest acts, building a roof from rubble, melting snow for water, keeping a flame alive, became the entire definition of survival. What happened in Stalingrad wasn't only a battle of armies. It was a war against the elements themselves, fought by people who had nothing left but will. Every dugout, every fire, every letter written in the dark was an act of defiance. They weren't just trying to stay alive, they were trying to prove that warmth, kindness, and memory could exist even where the world had turned to ice. Most of them never saw a sunrise that didn't hurt. They never woke to quiet that wasn't dangerous, or light that wasn't a signal to hide. Their mornings were made of smoke and frost, their nights of silence and fear. Yet somehow they built a world underneath the ruins, a hidden city carved from dirt and breath, that refused to die before they did. The ruins are gone now. The city has risen again. People walk those same streets without realising how much earth holds beneath it. They cross bridges built over ground where others once dug with their hands just to stay warm. Every building, every brick, every step taken in the open air is part of the monument those men never meant to build. When you wake tomorrow, when you stretch beneath a roof that keeps the sky out, when the air in your room is warm and quiet, remember that it wasn't always free. Somewhere beneath the snow, in the soil that remembers everything, there are still traces of the fires they built. The warmth you feel now began there, in those holes in the earth, kept alive by hands that refuse to stop shaking. So tonight, when you close your eyes, let the silence feel gentle instead of heavy. Let the dark feel safe. Let the warmth reach you without guilt. Because every breath of comfort, every moment of calm, every ordinary second of being alive is the ending they never got to see. Sleep well, stay warm, and remember them